Happy Mushoku Mondays, everybody. Welcome back to yet another trek to Mushoku Tensei Jobless Reincarnation novel series. We are on Redundant Reincarnation Part 2. I said it. I said redundancy. I'm always going to say redundancy. I'm never going to say redundant reincarnation. It just sounds so stupid. But anyways, yes, we're starting off the next volume of Redundant. And yes, it looks like we have, the doll has reappeared. We have Mecha Nana. We have Mecha Banana has made its appearance. But yes, I've read pretty much the entirety of this first story arc in here, which is the Let's Make an Automaton. I'm not sure exactly how much we'll get through it. It's looking like the stories in this particular Redundant is much longer than the previous. So I think things are going to kind of pan out a little bit differently. But we'll see as we go along if I can finish the entire story or not. We'll see. But yes, I greatly appreciate everybody's support, your kind words, everybody that's kind of been with me on this journey through Mushoku Tensei. It's been absolutely fantastic. You guys are absolutely amazing. And yes, as per usual, greatly appreciate everybody's supports channel, monetary through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. Rotflux Slay last week with 14 months. We're going to build up that 2-year mark eventually. Rose Moist with a super thank you, Rose Moist. And Nicholas, spreading those emotes once again, just dropping 50 memberships all over the place. All the chatters are dodging, all those lurkers are getting memberships. So lurker, make sure you just pop in there and throw a quick emote up on there. But yes, I greatly appreciate the support. It means a lot to me. But without further ado, like I said before, because these are really long segments, let's just get right into it. Starting things off with Chapter 1, The Day the Doll Walked, Part 1. The night was stormy, pounding rain drenched the earth, and great bolts of lightning smote the earth with flashes, illuminating a lone house standing in a deserted plain. Inside the house, 2 mad scientists were cackling. Mwah, 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 at last. Yes, at last, it's finished. Still cackling, the scientists clasped one another's hands and danced around the room.
Truly, but for your genius, Master, we could never have done it.
Don't be silly, Zenoba. It wouldn't have been possible without your bottomless store of knowledge and inspiration. The scientists were Rudius and Zenoba. Their mutual praise stopped with their dancing. There was something in the back of the room, a stone bed, that gave off an eerie glow. On it lay a girl. She was stark naked. What a long journey it's been. Rudius reflected on their string of failures. The first attempt hadn't even powered on. It had taken dozens of minor adjustments, and reversing those adjustments until they finished the first prototype. It powered on, only for them to discover it was a golem that could only mindlessly obey. There was a demand for such things, but it was a far cry from what they wanted to create. From the second prototype on, they devoted their time and labor to the development of a core with artificial intelligence and a more lifelike figure. Naturally, they still experienced one failure after another. The body did become more and more passively human, but tweaking the materials so that the movements were more realistic led to resilience problems. When they tweaked the core instead to compensate, it stopped powering on at all. The two of them were amazed and frustrated by the fragility of the balance that made a living person work. Failure chased failure. They repeatedly reviewed the notes from the maniacal Dragon King, Chaos, and even begged advice from Dragon King Pt.1, who gave them hints about magic circles and spirit summoning. Yeah, now that I think about it, after kind of seeing how Rudius became very set on the idea of creating a automaton, the idea of recreating this thing they found in his mansion, going to make basically, again, robotic dolls that will do, yes, in a lot of cases, anything that somebody wants. It's fun to think that technically in this world, there's something that is better. In a sense, there's something better. Pt.1, using spirit summoning, was able to summon essentially human-like forms that can think for themselves and are extremely intelligent. So what's the point in creating the skeletal structure and everything from scratch when you can literally do it there? Now, the idea there is the contract and who exactly needs to actually summon it, how much mana is needed to summon it, and all that kind of stuff. It is technically equally as difficult, whereas Rudius and Zenoba are, what I'm presumably creating is, again, something they can have anybody manufacture, as long as you know each separate part, and they can be separately manufactured and then assembled together, and then basically packaged up and sent out to nobles that are going to want them, that can actually afford them. Like, there's all these different steps that can essentially lead to a finished product, whereas something like Pt.1 and what he created with his spirits, yeah, that's a much more complicated process. You're going to have to get the okay from Pt.1 because he's probably going to have to do a lot of the work, or Orsted's going to have to do a lot of the work. It is kind of funny to think about the fact that I'm like, well, isn't this technically a much more complicated process than what Pt.1 is already doing? Why not just make a bunch of Armamphi summoning circles that everybody can use? Again, because how they kind of explain that stuff was that you're sort of You're drawing the code and the blueprints for the individual that it's essentially going to create. But yeah, I'm curious if I'm the only one that kind of likes this stuff, where it kind of goes through the process of the step-by-step. The first one they created was essentially a mindless golem, which I can totally see in the idea that, yeah, you'd probably be able to give it set boundaries for what it's going to do. It's basically a Roomba. You're basically creating a Roomba. This is what it's going to do. It always does A, B, C, D, E. Whereas Rudius wants something that's more lifelike, that will actually respond to what you're telling it. It will learn things. It will be able to adjust itself more. The idea of actually creating an artificial intelligence as some sort of core, how? And again, I guess it goes to what Pt.1 was involved with, the spirit summoning, all that kind of stuff. How do you create something that can actually think for itself? Something that we only now, in our society, in modern times, are now figuring out how to create something that is, I wouldn't really agree is true artificial intelligence, but it's essentially seeing a lot of information and it's making judgments based on that information. Dragon God Orsted offered them a hard-to-find magic stone and shared information about materials. Even so, the failures continued. Now here again, we're getting into stuff that, how are you going to replicate it? If you had to use some hard-to-find magic stone that Orsted gave you, you're not gonna recreate this. They'd innovated beyond the maniacal Dragon King somehow. As they imagined their goal would forever be out of reach, they wept. Before the tears from their last failure were dry, they approached the challenge with fresh resolve, only to fail once again. Every failure led to small but fresh observation and discoveries. 1 month prior, at last, they'd had success, and the prototype doll had powered on. It was the third iteration, with a blank, featureless face, but it powered on. Rudius and Zenoba did their little victory dance, and then, once they'd finished extracting data from the third prototype, they'd immediately start work on the fourth. The fourth specs were almost as good as the final models. It had a human body and face. Its mouth moved when it spoke, and it could move around using its own limbs. However, Rudius and Zenoba had not run every test that they should have on the previous prototype, and had moved on without addressing several undiscovered problems. They just couldn't resist the urge to see their doll move as it had in their dreams. But it should be fine. There was nothing about Prototype 3 that they couldn't simply put off until Prototype 4. They'd use Prototype 4 to do their system check and review the compatibility with the base body for the final product. It'll be fine, surely, they thought. Just another step forward. This is what we want. We're doing it for the love of the game, and this, right here, is the automaton we've been striving for.
It is time. Powering on.
Right. Zenoba, his face glowing with excitement, reached a finger towards a magic stone nestled between the girl's modest breasts. Behind that stone, in the middle of her chest, was her core. It was engraved with complex and delicate magic circles that functioned as both the brain and her literal heart, like a computer's CPU. When the core was powered on, the figurine would stand on its own feet, learn by itself, make its own decisions, generate its own mana, and continue to function practically in perpetuity. A fully autonomous doll. I mean, it mentioned earlier, it did technically mention earlier that they far past the maniacal Dragon King. They're innovating far beyond that. Again, with the original one, it was this thing that was able to move around, make decisions seemingly, but it was very kind of simple. It would go out, clean, and if anything got in the way, it would attack it. Once it was like done with its work or it was running out of mana, it would go back to its original base and basically be like a wireless charger. It would sit down as wireless charger, and the wireless charger would charge up the mana stone in it, and then it'd be able to go out again. Here it's implying that it's producing its own mana. What? I'm assuming this is going to be similar to like the magic circles for like the teleportation magic circles, where they place them in areas where it would be with a lot of mana in order to absorb that mana and to power the circle. I'm assuming it's something like that. It doesn't require a mana stone or something like that to be applied to it. It doesn't require it for it to sit on something that gives it mana. It's charging itself as it's moving around, constantly in perpetuity. Again, far beyond past the Dragon King and what he was doing with this thing. But yes, like usual, it has to be right there. The core always has to be right there. I mean, that's where the heart is, the essential point of everything, so it makes sense, but still, it gives an excuse to have to touch like right there to turn it on. Couldn't touch her back or anything, of course. Of course, it was possible that it could end up collapsing from a shortage of mana. If so, it could be returned to its bed and charged up once more. When Rudius first proposed this, Zenoba asked,
Wouldn't its reliance on human intervention to restart it mean it is complete?
Of course not, Rudius told him. I guess technically right there, it's implying the idea that it could still run out. And I guess that's more of an idea that, yes, like Rudius, he can regenerate his mana, but there's a chance that he can use too much mana and it just gets completely wiped out. But again, it was still over time recharge. I would assume that's an aspect of where it uses too much mana, then it's actually regenerating, then it's going to still collapse. That was precisely what would make it complete. When a person collapsed and couldn't get up again, they also need other people. It's even more human-like because it actually needs help from other people. Zenoba's outstretched finger stopped, hesitant. Perhaps someone else would have been reluctant to touch the chest of a young girl, but Zenoba wouldn't be squeamish about a minor detail like that.
Do you want to do it, Master?
Zenoba asked this, after hesitating for some time. No. You do it. It was your work that got us here. That was it. Zenoba was afraid of this moment, when their dreams of nearly 10 years would be realized. Nevertheless, it wasn't in his nature to be cowardly. It was barely in his vocabulary.
Very well. Then, let's begin.
Yeah. Zenoba slowly touched the girl's chest with his finger. His fingertip ran lightly across her skin, as though she might break, until he reached the core. Powering on the doll didn't take much mana. Anyone could do it. Again, it doesn't require like a circle, like again with the spirit summoning. It doesn't require a circle that you're going to have to pour a lot of mana into. This is something that's like, dupe a little bit to kind of just spark it and get going, and then again, it's going to be able to produce its own mana.
Awaken, O beloved daughter.
Zenoba said this, intoning the power on incantation. At once, there was a crackling as mana began to flow. The red light on the edge of the bed turned blue. Seeing it, Zenoba removed his finger, and for a few moments, everything was silent. The two men awaited with bated breath, watching the girl power on. The processes that followed power on were automated, so all they had to do was wait. They gotta make it out like it's gotta go through the whole boot process. It's gotta check the RAM. It's gotta check the graphics card. Everything checking out okay? Are the fan speeds good? The girl's black eyes blinked open. The only noise was the click as she physically disconnected from the bed. When the connection was broken, she slowly sat up. What connection? You got like a power cord plugged in there? What connection? There's like a power cord there? You gotta sever the copper wires from the back of the... Okay. Her skin was smooth and white, and she was so slender. It was as though she had no muscle at all. Her breasts were small but shapely, and she was curvy in a way that seemed almost out of place for her body type. This girl was a culmination of the skills Zenoba and Rudius had cultivated over long years of figurine making. Her body was constructed from artificial flesh, and the skeleton of the same material as the magic armor. So, earth? Was it pretty much earth? Wasn't it just mostly just plates of earth magic? What material earth magic? Earth? Dirt? Earth? I mean, it was layers of earth magic. It was like massive amounts of layers. The base of the artificial flesh was clay Rudius made out of earth magic, to which they added mana-rich scales from red dragons and illusion butterfly wings. Okay, mana-rich scales from red dragons, which I think they've brought up that before. Illusion butterfly wings? Illusion butterfly? I don't think we've ever mentioned illusion butterfly wings. Interesting. I'm guessing the mana-rich part of it applies to both of them. No, it says mana-rich scales from red dragons and illusion butterfly wings. So it might be two separate things. So that's how he's getting to skin itself. Because he's saying that the actual skeletal structure is similar to what they did with the magic armor. Which again was earth magic, pretty much, again, in layers and fortified. Getting into the actual flesh itself, earth magic clay with added mana-rich scales and butterfly wings. Very interesting. I was assuming that he was going to end up creating basically synthetic skin and stuff like that, but it seems like Refugian is going with sort of a fantastical spin on it. Here's materials that are kind of set to that location. Not that he recreates the whole process of making it in this new world. No, we'll use the materials that we have here, which I actually prefer that. I actually prefer that. I think it's more interesting. To round it out, they mixed in sap of an elder treant and the blood of an immortal demon. The finished flesh was product of experimentation and the finest materials. It was durable enough to last almost indefinitely, while feeling indistinguishable from a real person's skin. Okay, again, we're going back to the whole realm of this is not going to be... This is not something that you're mass producing here. It depends on how much blood is needed from the immortal demon. I mean, I'm assuming they going over there and saying, like, Alec, hey, give me some blood, or Kishirika or somebody, hey, give me some blood. This is the part where it's like, yeah, I don't think you can mass produce this. I thought the whole purpose here was to mass produce it. Again, you might as well go back to the whole thing about just do a spirit summon. This is something they want to do, and they're going to discover new ways of doing it. And I guess it goes back to the whole idea of the core. With Orsted giving them this really rare core, yeah, that's something that makes it not mass producible, but through using these elements, you're going to find ways of innovating. That's like typically with R&D, the initial like creation process of, say, a console. When they're creating new consoles, they spend a lot of money, and they use like custom-made parts just to start the process of putting it together until they can mass produce it and cut corners. But the initial process of creating it is extremely expensive. But through that, they discover how to make it more efficient. And that could be the case here. Or Rudius just wants to make one. Just wants to make one. In the end, it would just make one, we're good. To make it move, it was mounted on a magical circle engraved skeleton. The magic circles function like muscles to move the surrounding tissue. The principle was more or less the same as a magic armor, but the doll's joints additionally incorporated parts made from the bone dust of a Deathbreaker skeleton, utilizing the material's particularly high mana conductivity to make the doll's movements even more lifelike. Hopefully it doesn't get possessed by the Dawnbreaker skeleton. It's like it's got these inner workings and whatnot that are technically from a skeleton that moves. Hopefully it can control itself. The girl raised both arms, stretched them out, and opened and closed her hands. The movements of the upper torso, the arm and shoulders, down to the chest, and the sway of her breast was smooth. It was incredible, essentially graceful and real. Rudius gulped. I didn't realize it when we were making it, but look at it move. Damn. Zenoba didn't answer, but from his expression, he felt the same. The girl, without saying a word, laid back down, then raised her legs up one at a time, testing them. One smooth, white thigh rose, followed by another. Still, lying on her back, she bent and stretched out her knees, then spread her legs apart and closed them again, momentarily exposing her delicately constructed anatomy to Rudius and Zenoba. Those gestures were purely practical. The doll was programmed to automatically run an operational check on her joints when she powered on, then spit out errors for any part the check caught, literally in this case, as she had a mouth. I like how it has to point out the fact that this is completely practical. This is purely practical. She's not laying on her back and spreading out her legs like this because she wants to. Even though we're technically equipping it. Come on, just say that you made a sex spot. Come on, just say that you made a sex spot. Finally, with a shake of her shoulder-length black hair, the doll announced, I have powered on successfully. That meant her checks were complete. The voice her artificial vocal cords produced sounded very familiar. Phew. Rudius and Zenoba let out a breath, though their faces were still tense. They had failed here so many times before. Once, the doll tried to raise its arms, only for everything above the elbow to blast off through the ceiling like a mech's rocket punch. One time, its knee had bent in the wrong angle with a dull crunch. Yet another time, it had split apart at the crotch like a bizarre sculpture, then curled up like a shrimp with a dull crunch and crackling. These episodes, which could have been straight out of a splatter film if the body had been human, happened too many times to count during the construction of the third prototype. The root of the trouble was the doll's skeleton. A person wearing magic armor could regulate its power, but it took long experience using magic and muscles to have a feel for it. The doll had no experience, so its default was to use maximum strength and destroy itself. Because of this, they installed limiters all throughout the body. Even with the limiters, though, the doll's skeleton still had the same properties as a magic armor. So it had a high resistance threshold, allowing for movements on par with Saint Tier swordsmen. Yeah. I think this is sort of the funniest thing about this whole situation. And it's something that, again, we're currently facing in our real world, is the idea of how extremely complicated the human body is. Literally what Rudius and Zenoba are doing right here is trying to recreate a human, a body, and everything that is involved in that body. And it looks like, of course, the Maniacal Dragon King tried to do it as well. But you're essentially going from the bones, the muscle structure, the tissue, and the nervous system. The most complicated, mostly out of all that stuff, is, yes, the brain, the core, the AI itself going to be able to think and listen and respond to things, but also the nervous system and how it moves, how it gives power to every location, how the brain regulates that stuff. Again, I've talked about this before, but having somebody in my life that has sort of lost a lot of like mobility and having to retrain them mobility from the very get-go, it's like this long and stressful process of going through those steps. And it reminds us how amazing the human brain is to be able to figure that stuff out. This simple process of opening and closing your hands, and again, not overexerting strength and that kind of stuff. being able to gently pick something up rather than crush it and break the screen of this phone or something like that. All those calculations your brain does every microsecond is insane, dude. Every motion that you make, there's an insane amount of information being sent and returned to your brain. They have to mimic that. Yeah, there's a little bit of suspension of disbelief. There's a little bit of suspension of disbelief right here, okay? We're just going to put a little bit of that right there. Right there. It's to pull that off in this many steps. We'll just say that. He has listed out the prototypes that they have done. You pulled off that in 10 years, 2 people, yeah, big brain. You got some big brain right here in magic and fantasy right here. That's an insane achievement, for damn sure. It makes more sense with, like, Pt.1 and the spirits. How long he's been around, and again, it's using a magic system and whatnot. Anyways, suffice to say, the artificial creation's power and range of motion settings for bending its knees and elbows had failed many times before, so Zenoba and Rudius were relieved when there was no issues.
All working well, it seems.
Yeah. As if in response to their words, the figurine lying on the table turned its glassy, inorganic eyes towards Zenoba. May I ask your name, Master?
I am Zenoba.
Master Zenoba, you have been registered. What is your commands?
Register the man there as Submaster.
Understand. May I ask your name, gentleman, there? I am Rudius. Submaster Rudius, you have been registered. What is your commands? In the course of testing the third prototype, Zenoba and Rudius had run through this exchange many times. First, the doll would register its master, so she would do what it was told.
Good. Now, thou shalt get down from the bed and stand on the floor.
The figurine got off the bed, then stood up straight. Rudius punched in the air in triumph.
Great. He registered his master's name correctly and his following commands.
He looked down at his creation and felt a warm sense of accomplishment. This hadn't always gone well. Like when I am Zenoba registered its master as Master I am Zenoba. Other times, it hadn't got down from the bed or hadn't understood thou shalt. Again, these are aspects of the language itself that even to today's AI is still botching. Even to today's AI is still botching human language. They resolved these problems through direct consultation with Pt.1. Using his hints, they tweaked the magic circles, rebuilt the whole doll from scratch numerous times. Finally, it all come together. The result of that work was a summoning magic circle engraved into the doll's core, which covered the many things humans did instinctively. I wonder if that's a mistranslation. The result of that work was a summoning magic circle engraved in the doll's core, which covered many things humans did instinctively. Again, they consulted Pt.1, and again, Pt.1 is really damn good with summon circles, and again, spirit summon circles specifically. I'm kind of wondering if it's a spirit summon circle that is engraved on it that is pulling... It's... Okay, when Pt.1 summons the spirits, again, he's coding everything about it, and then using that to summon them. And there could be a chance that he's basically taking that segment as for the brain and putting it at that core, which is acting as the brain. This is how I code this stuff to think. And we're going to take that part of the circle, the summoning circle, and just put it right there. So again, it's not like there's a summoning circle that's summoning stuff constantly. It's just that's the code. They put that code there. That's what I'm thinking it's kind of saying there. Sorry, I geek out on this stuff.
Try to jump a little.
Yes, Master. Keeping its legs together, the figurine jumped up and down. It had a pretty powerful leap. The artificial flesh was capable of generating enough force to break the skeleton, but the limiter seemed to be functioning properly. Yeah, I feel like the whole limiter thing is like a total flag for later on. At some point, something bad's gonna happen. This thing's gonna have to bust out the limiters. Every time there's a robot thing like this, they always have limiters, and at some point they have to get rid of the limiters, and then they have to sacrifice themselves for somebody else. It's flagging it already. You put limiters on this stuff, it's flagging it.
Spread out your arms while you jump.
Yes, Master.
Spread your legs. Okay, stop.
Yes, Master.
Now start jumping again while spinning your arms around.
Yes, Master.
Spread your legs on one jump, then close them on the next.
Yes, Master. The doll did, just as Zenoba ordered her. Its short hair swished, and its limbs and body bounced dynamically. Its bounce was excellent.
Now, make a silly face.
The doll paused for a moment at this unexpected command, then said, Yes, Master. It put its hands on its cheeks and squished up its face. But that was it, without any expression. It was weird, and dubiously silly at best. However, the doll had thought about this and executed an order in its own way. In other words, Zenoba and Rudius had gotten the results they had hoped for. It did something unexpected that doesn't have an actual answer. Lift your leg. The leg gets lifted. Do a silly face what is silly. Try something.
It's sentient. It's sentient at that point. Most satisfactory.
Yeah, Rudius agreed, but he had a slight frown on his face as he looked at the doll. His eyes went to its breasts, which were small but jiggled when it jumped. Then there was the elaborately constructed parts between the legs. Here's where everything goes south. For the sake of Rudius's honor, let it be clear that there was nothing sexual in his look. The doll was his own creation after all. He just hadn't expected this level of perfection. It scared him, though it wasn't his own genius that he feared. Similarities are just too glaring. It's not the face, but the voice too, even if it was coincidence. Rudius regarded the doll's face. It met his eyes, but didn't smile. They built it to be capable of smiling, but it seemed it still couldn't do it without an order. That, however, was not what concerned Rudius. We're going to get in trouble for this. See, the figurine's face bore a striking resemblance to someone they both knew. At this point, I was thinking maybe Roxy, but the fact that he's had black hair, I was trying to think. I think the short hair part threw me off, so I didn't actually get to the conclusion of it.
With Miss Nanahoshi, you mean?
That's right. The doll had a striking resemblance to Shizuka Nanahoshi, their friend from another world who slumbered in Chaos Breaker, the floating fortress. It's like it's more bad the fact that she's sleeping right now. It's not just that they're remaking her as a sex bot, but more the fact that she's sleeping right now while they're doing it over here. It wasn't just the face. The doll's hair wasn't the same length as Nanahoshi's, but it was black, and the body was almost exactly the same height and build. Rudius and Zenoba had constructed a naked doll that looked just like their friend. I'm curious how... I'm more curious how they got her figure right. Rudius, you even peeking? Rudius, you even peeking? I mean, be around them enough. You might get a sense of their figure. Rudius and Zenoba had constructed a naked doll that looked just like their friend. A doll that happened to have sexy breasts and fit-for-purpose parts between its legs. And there's the... There's the part where it's like, what? Why did we, what? It's a process. I know it's a process. They're making this thing and then they're like, oh, well, we needed this thing too. So let's go ahead and just do both. We got it. We need to make this thing. They were going to make a sex bot. No matter what. Yes, that was a goal. I think they established that plenty of time. They were going to make a doll and it was going to be something that could also fit those purposes. But then there was a part where he kind of adds on to it later on about having something that can still spread the word of Nanahoshi. So it's like, okay, well, I have this goal too. So let's just go ahead and just put the two goals together. In a sense, that's where I break. Oh, we'll get in that in a minute. That's the part where I'm like, yeah, that would have been the line is created. No, you shouldn't do that. I mean, Silfie and the others, idiot. It was the wrath of his wife he had to fear.
Master, did you not say, given Miss Nanahoshi's long slumber, you need someone to stand in for her?
Well, yeah, there was a reason for the resemblance. In case Nanahoshi's hypothesis that her friend would also be transported to this world turned out to be true, the best way to ensure future generations knew Nanahoshi's name was for them to know what she looked like as well.
Your wives know all that, don't they?
They knew that we were making an automaton, but they didn't know we were making it look like Nanahoshi. Admittedly, Rudius didn't think his wives would have a problem with his intentions, and Nanahoshi herself had given her approval. So long as they explained all that, they'd understand. Problem is her breasts and the bits between her legs. It was a doll that looked like their friend and was capable of having sex. If his wives found out, they were not going to be chill about it. Unless he played this right, his bed was going to turn very cold. Silfie might cry or get depressed, and he could imagine her puffing on her cheeks and saying, "You put all that work into it, why don't you try it out?" None of these were good outcomes. Again, I get the mindset here is the original intention is to create, again, a made bot, an automaton. And then, of course, there was the aspect of, yes, they were going to have it to where it could do this too. But then again, he at some point goes, hey, I have this whole thing where we need to get Nanahoshi's name out there, so let's go ahead and let's throw that on there as well. There's the disconnect that happens there because you're applying her face and appearance. The end result is that you're going to have a Nanahoshi running around to get the name out of Nanahoshi and her appearance, but she's going to be running around with all the bits and pieces that people can take advantage of while she's over here sleeping. That's the wrong part for me. That's the part that bugs me. It's like you literally slapped a face on something that people can bone. That doesn't seem right. That's the part that does not seem right to me. That's where it kind of like, okay, apply something over those bits to cover it up. Like what? I'm already right here going, just cover them up. You create a synthetic skin that can apply itself to itself. Put something over it that can't be removed. Bing bong. Put little pasties that actually adhere to the skin that you can't reapply. Bing bong. Andrew's so brilliant, and I didn't even make an AI freaking robot that can run around, and I figured that part out. I'm almost wondering if this is one of those situations where we're too smart that we're dumb. Just put something over it. Something that literally cannot be removed. Not that it changes anything, but because if somebody wants to get something out of this thing, if the skin feels the way it does, they're going to get something out of this thing. It doesn't matter if it's got bits and pieces down there or not. They're going to get something out of this bot. None of these were good outcomes. We didn't have to make them so elaborate.
But Master, this marvelous piece of modeling showcases the full range of your skill. The nipples, in particular, are most titillating.
Stop, Zenoba. Stop. Zenoba, you idiot. I'm trying to be discreet. Shut up about the nipples. Shut up about the nipples.
Pardon?
Why had they made her breasts and parts between the legs so elaborate? It was true that back when they made the plan, Rudius's design ideals had gone in that direction. That is, a sex doll sort of direction. Yep. That was the ultimate choice. I mean, again, for this to be like very, very appealing to very rich people, yeah, this is what the direction is going. However, later, they moved in another direction, so they ought to have restrained themselves. They could have kept its breasts and the parts between the legs G-rated and avoided this conversation altogether. Again, just make it flat. A doll didn't need nipples, and this was only the 4th prototype. There was no reason to have it look like Nanahoshi at the prototype stage. Rudius had gotten carried away. We can't tell Silfie and the others about this.
Oh yes, you are afraid of your wives.
I prefer to say I love my wives. Only a few people knew they were making a figurine in Nanahoshi's image. Orsted, Pedagoose, and Nanahoshi herself. Naturally, they intended to unveil it, notify relevant parties once it was finished, and make use of it when needed. Once it came out how elaborately constructed the figurine was, Rudius and Zenoba might be in for some serious side-eye. Again, just apply things to cover it up. Rudius could picture Roxy's unimpressed stare as she said, "Your little creation has much nicer figure than mine, doesn't it?" Or she might just give him a dark look and then take some space from him. If that happened, he might as well just commit seppuku.
I doubt your wives will make a fuss over things like this. Everyone knows you're a man of strong passions, Master.
If it were just a normal doll, I'd agree with you. But I can't help but think, it looking like Nanahoshi is going to have implications. Rudius potted the doll's chest dubiously. It didn't quite feel human, but it was very soft all the same. If he hadn't made it himself, it would have gotten him pretty excited. Such excitement could have been interpreted as cheating. If Edis thought he was cheating, the corners of her mouth would turn down as she said, "Humph," and socked him with the nose-hold-bar punch. She'd lay him out, get on top of him, and dominate him so thoroughly that he'd never stray again. Edis is the only one that's like, I'll just make you never leave me. Everybody else is like disgusted, but she's like, I'll just force you to never be able to work anywhere else. I don't quite understand the whole idea of because he created himself, he's not turned on by it. That's the part that I don't think I really understand. I mean, this is getting a little bit pervy here, but it's almost like an artist drawing a lewd image and then not being turned on by it. I don't really necessarily think that's the case. They're sort of forming it that because Rudius made this bot, he sees it as his child. I don't necessarily think that would be really true. I don't think that would actually happen. I don't think that would happen. I guess the only real kind of example we would have is if somebody out there has made a sex bot or a sex doll and is not really turned on by it. Then I would really question, are you making a very enticing sex bot? The way they're writing this, they're really trying to paint it as he sees it as his child, which again, I don't see that would be really the case. Actually, Rudius might not have minded that. He's like, wait, I like this idea now. Let's tell everybody. As he poked the doll, it stared fixingly at his finger, but otherwise didn't react. It would only sense that it's being touched. They hadn't given it the ability to experience sexual pleasure. If Elise or Ariel had gotten closely involved with the project, it might have been different. But both of them were busy with the struggles of motherhood.
In that case, shall we scrap it?
Zenoba asked, looking grim. The idea of throwing away the doll was not one he relished. The idea of throwing away any figurine, for that matter.
No, it'd be a waste to scrap it when we're so close to completion.
Rudius folded his arms and began to mull over the problem. Considering the worst-case scenario, They were better off scrapping the figurine and starting over from scratch. It wasn't possible to replace only the breasts and parts between the legs with the technology they currently possessed. That was something to consider if they ever looked to mass production. But at present, this was a one-of-a-kind item. So right there, it's implying the idea they cannot apply another layer upon it. Sort of making it out as if every single, like, wrap of skin that they have put on this thing is one of a kind and you cannot wrap it ever again. That seems off. That seems like it's kind of forcing that he can't do it. That doesn't make any sense. That you can apply a skin on it and you can't apply it ever again. Like they only were able to put enough together for one production. I think it's kind of just forcing the whole thing. It can't be easily fixed thing. It's fine. No, it'd be a waste to scrap it when we're so close to completion.
But if it were ever discovered, I cannot imagine it will be. We went to the trouble of setting up the laboratory all the way out here to avoid that, didn't we?
Yeah, but they were currently on the edge of the Fatoa domain in the Osra Kingdom. They had rented an area of the still recovering domain from the Boreas family, then turned the house there into a laboratory. Not many people knew of its location. It didn't have any entrances. It was only possible to enter and leave by the teleportation circle. It's fine for you. You won't get much trouble.
I will. Remember, I told you Julie has been getting angry with me as of late.
Oh, yeah. Even Juliet, who was in theory collaborating with them on this plan, didn't know about this place. She helped them creating the artificial flesh and bones, but she didn't know where it was all put together. They had left her out because lately she had gotten grumpy when Zenoba bought sexy figurines. She didn't destroy them or anything, of course, but she tried to shut them out of Zenoba's sights. She's like hiding them. Girls hiding them. That was just how it was. Julie was an adult by society standards and had been for some time, but in terms of the years, she was still at that age, teenage. Rudius and Zenoba had enough sensitivity to consider the feelings of a maiden like her. But it's possible that Julie will find the teleportation circle, isn't it? The teleportation circle that led to the lab was in the basement of Zenoba's workshop. What if Julie went down there, learned of the teleportation circle, then stepped onto it out of curiosity? She'd end up coming face to face with an unclothed automaton. That is, a naked girl. She'd be in for a shock. It's all starting to go to my whole theory that I made about Julie and Ginger getting together to make a bus that she can go inside of. This literally is feeling like that. It's going that direction.
No, for I take care to lock it from the inside, and I only have one key right here.
That won't keep Julie out. I taught her how to open locks with earth magic.
Julie would never open a door that I locked. She promised me as much.
Ah, right. Sometimes promises get broken, dude. Julie and Zenoba were so close that they practically read each other's thoughts, but they were still technically master and slave. Julie knew there were certain lines that she could never cross.
Focusing back on the problem, what can we do?
Rudius folded his arms and thought. Only the nipples and the parts between the legs were the problem. They hadn't added any really dodgy parts. This was only a prototype 4. They could scrap it once they got all the data from it. Let's not blame Rudius for not immediately deciding to scrap the figurine. He had put a great deal of money and time into it, and they hadn't done the tests that they should have for prototype 3. Scrapping it right away, just because the nipples were a bit sexy, would be wasteful in the extreme. Then, a light bulb flicked in Zenoba's head.
But Master!
What is it?
We can have it put on some clothes.
Cover it up! Cover it up! Huh? You're right, Eureka! Zenoba's idea made it click for Rudius as well. At this stage, everything was hanging out. No good. But with clothes on, the lewd parts would be hidden. Aside from a crazed rapist, no one would go suddenly ripping off the doll's clothes. If they didn't say anything, who was going to find out? I guess anybody that would have to clean it? If it ever got dirty and it had to be cleaned? I mean, unless it's taught to clean itself. Or again, if it's brought to somebody and they're like, oh, it's super cute, let's have it try on this dress or yada yada. Yeah, they're going to find out. All right then, hold on a second. Rudius dashed off into the other room. There were clothes there. He had gotten ready beforehand. A heavy beige dress, of the sort that was common in the Magic City, along with brand new panties and bra. In fact, they had planned to put these clothes on the figurine from the start. Zenoba and Rudius had been quaking in fear over a sexy, naked girl for nothing. Again, I just think making more skin to put over it would be better. Again, technically making skin-based underwear would probably be best. That way, even if the stuff is taken off, there's still something that's covering it. I know I'm overthinking this way too much, but I think it's a great response to them overthinking how it's a bad thing. Right. Rudius said as he returned, turning the doll that stood there, stock still. Put these on. Yes, master. Once you're dressed, lie down on the bed. Yes, master. It followed his commands. For the time being, with clothes on, it didn't seem sinful anymore. She was simply a girl who looked like Nanahoshi, slotted perfectly into the bed. There was nothing remotely prurient about it. Actually, if anything, she was a bit creepy because her eyes were open and unblinking. So long as he looked like this, all of his problems were solved. I would actually be shocked if anybody didn't immediately assume that it probably has all the parts ready for somebody to utilize. If Rudius made an automaton like this and it wouldn't have those things, I'd be shocked. You know what? After all that, I'm exhausted. It's a bit early, but let's call it a day.
Indeed.
For now, they had a plan of action. Rudius sank on his chair with a sigh. In the end, they hadn't been able to test anything except for power on procedure, but the results were excellent. There was no need to panic. They could teach the figurine more tomorrow. Rudius tapped his palm with his fist, feeling triumphant. Now, let's celebrate the first great leap of our plan.
Yes, let's. I thought you might say that, so I have this ready.
Zenoba carried a cask from the corner of the room to the middle, then smashed the boards on the top with his fist. There was a splintering sound as a little bit of the liquid within it spilled out. You think of everything. Zenoba picked up a cup that he had brought and scooped the contents of the cask. It came out full of translucent purple liquid, Osran wine. Oh, you got any food?
Only preserved supplies.
Oh well, that'll do. The two men brought armsfuls of dried food up from the cellar and piled it up next to the cask. That done, they raised their brimming cups to one another, to the advancement of the figurine project.
To the fulfillment of our dreams.
Cheers. With that, the celebrations began. What should we teach it first?
Now that we've completed the zipper operations check, I'd like to run a test on how adaptable it is, how much it can remember, and the limits of the flexibility of its thinking.
We got a lot to investigate. Let's do all the tests we can. Rudius and Zenoba drank as they discussed their future plans. When they'd powered down the doll earlier, it hadn't outwardly done anything extraordinary, but it had interpreted and executed even ambiguous commands. It would learn autonomously, working off the basic knowledge included in its initial settings. However, just how much of its intelligence could grow remained to be seen. How much of it would it be able to remember, and what would it learn to do? Would it be able to think and judge for itself?
Leave it to me, Master. I shall take responsibility for giving it a broad education.
Just don't teach it anything it shouldn't know, right?
I might say very same to you, Master.
When did you become a smart? The two of them laughed as they imagined the future, filling their bellies with wine. Zenoba changed the subject.
The byproducts you created are selling well, Master.
Yeah, I did make a lot of stuff while we were researching. So you're selling them at the shop?
We've had particularly positive responses to that. One thing. The frog sleeve.
The frog sleeve. I forgot about this frog sleeve. Of course. Another world with my condoms. Oh, yeah. It had taken a lot of trial and error, but Rudius was able to reproduce the texture of the human skin. One iteration had used reinforced frog cheek pouches. It was extremely thin and elastic, but tough enough that it took a significant amount of force to tear it. Initially, Rudius thought that he could use it to make the skin for the figurine, but they'd found better material and hadn't ended up using it. Instead, he made something different. Contraceptive, huh? It was a condom.
Just so. Master Luke was especially pleased with it. He's pushing it on our behalf to build a factory in Osra.
Osra nobles really love that sort of thing, huh?
You say that, but you use them too, don't you, Master?
Well, you know, he did use them almost every night. After his third and fourth daughters, Lily and Chris, were born, there had been an unspoken agreement the next baby would be Silfie's. For a while, Rudius gave the most attention to Silfie and less to Roxy and Edis. Unfortunately, perhaps because of her race, Silfie had not gotten pregnant a third time. It was possible that they'd just gotten lucky with the timing for Lucy and Sieg. Or maybe God was being cruel. Who knew? Either way, Edis had gotten restless while they did it less. Her sex drive had settled down a lot compared to how she once was, but it was still a force to be reckoned with, like a wild beast with ravenous hunger in its eyes. Rudius could easily find himself pounced upon, and then Edis might get pregnant. That's where the contraceptive came in. Just use this little guy, and hey, presto. He could satisfy Edis' ravenous beast without making any little beasts. No Silfie scratching her cheek and looking forlornly at Edis' pregnant belly. No Edis looking back with a vaguely guilt expression. Defensively saying, what? No need for any household disharmony. And this miraculous convention could be had for one, that's right, one Osran silver coin. All yours for the complete price of one Osran silver coin. It's like an infomercial. Are you tired of your elf wife not having a baby and your other wife getting really angry and angsty about it? Just use a condom. That's interesting that they're still trying to keep the baby making even. Or again, just more the idea of Edis and Roxy not wanting to outdo Silfie. Again, her being the initial one and thus always respecting her, not trying to insult her in any way. I can see it being both ways. And one is the aspect, again, that because she's there first, Silfie's there first, and they don't want to outdo her anyway. But the other side, it could be the idea of them not wanting to make her feel bad because, again, she's dealing with the fact that she doesn't get pregnant often. Being an elf, it's a bit harder to get pregnant. And so for them to get pregnant, it would essentially make her feel bad that she's not able to give Rudius more children. I can totally see that. But I'm more surprised the other direction, that Silfie doesn't push them, to do more and have more kids and not to just wait on her. But I can see, again, that's the whole aspect of it being unspoken. Nobody talks about it, because if you were to say it outright, then Silfie's gonna be like, no, please don't do that for me. I mean, it's not ideal having more kids when we don't have more people to look after them.
Why not simply hire a servant?
He's got 2 already. He's got 2 already. If we hire a servant, then I won't be the one looking after them. That's a good way to say that. I can't even keep up with 6. You might not think it, but I want to watch over every one of them. I want to say something so mean right now. I want to say something so mean right now. We barely have any chapters with you spending any time with them, so it's hard to believe that. And you spent 10 years making a freaking automaton right here. I X'd it out there, Rudius. You've spent very little time with them that we see. I think chapter 1 with him walking home with Silfie and Lucy and him having Lada sleep on his chest were like the only 2 interactions that we had in like so many damn volumes. Big doubt there, Rudius.
Ah, that is just like you, Master.
At this, Rudius was suddenly inspired to ask something he'd always wondered about. Come to think of it, what's the story with you and Julie?
Whatever do you mean?
Well, are you going to remarry?
You mean to Julie?
Sure, there's an age gap, and Julie's pretty low down in society. But you don't think of yourself as royalty anymore, right? It's a sweet life, Getting married, having all the children around you. You tell them how proud you are. Sometimes they play tricks on you, and you have to tell them off. Zenoba slowly shook his head, and then said firmly,
I will not get married.
Oh? Rudius fell silent. Everyone had things they didn't want others to pry into. Zenoba surely had more on his mind than simple preferences. He had a whole lot of baggage, being royalty, his previous marriage, killing his little brother, and what happened to Pax.
It's nothing exciting. Do you want to hear about it?
If you're happy to tell me.
As a blessed child, I am incredibly strong and tough, but the trade-off is that my skin is insensitive.
So?
The skin of flesh and blood women is too soft to provide me with stimulation.
These words hit Rudius like a blow to his head. It was obscene, but explained things. Like why Zenoba used the bronze statue for everything.
That isn't all, of course. There are many other things, like Pax and Julius. But more than anything else, it would be cruel to take on a partner if I cannot give her a child.
Right. But, you can still ask Julie. If you get a chance. Maybe she'll say that she doesn't mind not having a child. Or you could, adopt. That was a key thing there. He mumbled over his words because he already had 6 children of his own. Zenoba laughed without enthusiasm.
That is true.
Okay, so finally giving an answer as to why Zenoba's rubbing off on bronze statues. Again, it goes back to that whole thing where there's this whole element of, does he do this because he's lost his mind, he's crazy, he's special in some way, yada, yada, yada. And again, every single time we get into this stuff, there's always sort of another door that's open that kind of says, no, there's a reason behind this. No, he's actually thinking about this stuff. He's thinking about family. He does care about his family. Is he always doing this because he's stuck on this whole idea of servitude to the nation? No, it's because of this reason. It's because of this reason. There's another reason. There's a deeper thought process here. And this sort of, again, takes a joke and gives an explanation. Why is Zenoba always rubbing on these bronze statues? Is it because he simply is just obsessed with figurines and the craftsmanship and all that kind of stuff? Yeah, there's probably a part of it that it is that. But there's a deeper aspect here is that that's the only thing that he can sort of have any sort of stimulation from. He is still a man. In the end, Zenoba, big shock, is a dude. And dudes need stimulation. This is something they want to do. This is a relieving of stress. This is a pleasure thing they're going to want. And for Zenoba, a bronze statue gives him that pleasure. Because his body is so insensitive that it requires something very rough in order to get some sort of stimulation from. And so he's getting it from these statues. Again, I joked about it, and I remember it was somewhere back there. I think it was in the Redundancy one. Somewhere back there, I was talking about the idea of Julie and Ginger getting together to make a bus that they can get inside of in order for them to get something out of Zenoba. It literally is true. It literally is actually coming true. It almost feels like Refugin was reading my mind back there. He looked into the future to see what I said there, and he wrote it way back there. It literally is the only thing they could technically do. If he took himself a wife, Julie, gender, yada, yada, yada. If he took himself a bride, he wouldn't be able to perform, is really what it is. And right here, he's saying that he wouldn't want to have them suffer without having a child. That's yeah, I can see that. I cannot give you a child, and thus I will not marry you because you're better off with somebody else that can give you a child. This is something a wife would want to have eventually, is to be able to have a child. Rudius' response is great. I think Rudius' response is amazing if you think about it. Because Rudius is saying, hey, well, you don't have to have a child with Julie. You can adopt. Because what is Julie essentially? And I think Julie might actually gravitate to this. Julie, no matter how you feel about the whole her being bought thing, Julie is an adoption. In the end, the way that Julie was treated, in the end, no matter where she came from, cut that part out, how you see Julie in their relationship is an adopted child. She listens to the command of her parents, her guardians, what she's supposed to do, how she's supposed to act. Those parents' guardians taught her language, instructed her, gave her clothing, a place to stay, food, and in the end, never wanted to really command her at all. But there is commanding that's happening, and again, a lot of that is just stuff that you would get from guardians and parents. Julie is an adopted child, and thus I can see her, in the end, wanting the idea of, again, adopting a child that has no home, or, even further, saving another child who's just like her, that was being sold off. It happened to me. They saved me. I want to do that for another child. I can see her being open to that. Let's have a child together that we saved from forced servitude. I can see it. Rudius decided not to say more about the marriage and returned to the original subject. These were supposed to be celebratory drinks, where they imbibed and had a good time. Anyways, enough about the rubbers. What about the other things? They sell well?
They see modest trade. They seem they are viewed rather as curiosities, so only certain enthusiasts are looking to collect them.
I feel like they were pretty useful. I should love the vacuum cleaner. So in the end, Rudius ends up bringing modern technologies to this world. I mean, he's technically making, again, a sex bot. I was kind of wondering if at some point he would actually do something like this. Bring in some sort of technology or something from modern Japan and rebuilding it in this world. Again, he's sort of applied it in certain ways here and there, like, again, daughter boards and all that kind of stuff with at least the logic behind certain things in the whole summoning situation. But for the most part, he's always kind of accepted the world for what it is and never really applied much of his knowledge to get ahead in, creating a technology that could be sold. And it wasn't until he ran into Nanahoshi and her different creations that she had brought to this world where it was kind of a little bit of a jealousy there. And I think he even mentioned at some point why couldn't she have brought like air conditioning to this world, I think at some point he said. But it was always Nanahoshi that was bringing niceties or at least logics from Japan or her life in Japan to this new world and benefiting from it in some way. So here's where finally Rudius is going, okay, let's make a vacuum cleaner. Let's make a microwave and let's sell it to this new world. But it seems like apparently it's not going well. Apparently it's not going well. You would think like things like vacuum cleaners, hell yeah, that should be very, very popular. But Aisha loves it. Aisha loves it. Interesting. He's pointing out that, yes, it's got modest trade, but it seems that people just buy them as collecting them. I'd be curious what else he brought. Rudius' byproduct inventions were many and varied. They included fans and vacuum cleaners that used magic circles, various waterproof items, and a cooler box. Each was useful, but very few caught on. Most of the effects could be reproduced by using magic, and because of the somewhat specialized materials, they had no choice but set prices relatively high. Okay, well that answers all that question. There's why it's not really catching on. They're very, again, specialty items that can be done by using magic. Further research into the materials might make it possible to sell them more cheaply, but that wasn't their goal.
Useful they may be, but Osra and Millis already have magical implements that produce the same effect, and hiring a servant is both faster and more convenient.
I feel like hiring a servant would take more work. Rudius downed his drink and sighed. Even though he lived long enough in this world that he might as well have been born here, he couldn't entirely shake his previous life. Again, I'm surprised it took him that long. Again, about the only thing that he's really ever up to this point brought over from the previous life is just cuisine. About the only thing that he's really stuck on in his new life is just cuisine. Technically, he renovated his house around concepts of Japan, so there's one thing. Oh well. How about we at least put together a book on how to make them? Even if it's just to pass on the technology. People in the future might find a use for it.
A very fine idea. No doubt that book will be a marvelous discovery for anyone who wants to continue your legacy.
I could call it the Book of Rudius or something.
Never would the magicians of generations to come guessed that the tome bearing the name of the dragon god's right hand will contain instructions on how to make household goods.
Rudius and Zenoba cheerfully worked their way through the cask of wine, their faces glowing redder and redder. A whole cask was a little more than just the two of them could handle. It's a shame that Cliff and Sir Barty aren't here. Barty? Is that supposed to be Body Gotti? I'm guessing that's supposed to be Body Gotti. I can't think of another Barty something. Sir Barty. Sir Batty makes sense. Yeah, so Sir Barty. That's gotta be Body Gotti. Because they're partying and it's gotta be Body Gotti.
I imagine. Master Cliff would have objected to such an indecent doll.
He'd have been appalled, but he let it slide. Let's bring him in for the next stage. Heck, we could race a toast in his rooms in Millis.
An excellent idea. Yes, that's just it. Once we have used this prototype to complete it properly, why don't we present our first glorious automaton to Cliff as a gift?
Good idea. Except it can't be a girl model. What is a girl? What? Are we making a church joke? Are we making a Catholic church joke? Great idea. Except it can't be a girl model. Let's make it a boy.
A boy would be nice too.
Well, your interest swings that way too, do they?
I have no feelings or desire for men, but I can appreciate the beauty of a boy. You understand, don't you, Master?
Oh, I do. I understand it so well, I wouldn't have minded if Fitz had actually been a boy.
You are something, Master.
Again, I'm wondering if they're making us comment there about the Millis Church. Jeez. By now, their party was in full swing, and the two of them were getting drunker and drunker by the minute. The wine tasted all the better when sweetened with success. Right, okay, next time, we make a boy model, and we'll make it so super cool that Cliff gets jealous. The two of them had noticed something important. They weren't aware of the staring eyes watching them as they drank, nor did they realize that their conversation had been overheard. They didn't see her smile. See, when I read this right here, I assumed that Julie was watching them. So when it gets into all this stuff coming up here soon, I thought that it was going to be like Julie snuck in there and started up or something like that. That implies the model was watching them. Ugh, my head's killing me. The next day had dawned. As Rudius got up, he applied an antidote to his aching head. Looking out the window, he saw the storm had subsided entirely, leaving a cloudless blue sky. This late already? I guess I drank too much. All the same, there was nothing like having a drink together as men, especially when it was a celebration. The doll's indecency the previous day had thrown him a bit, but that was what it was. If the prototype was that good, he couldn't wait to see what the future held. Rudius felt possibility spread its wings, his heart bursting with hope and love as he turned to peek at the doll's face. Huh? It wasn't there. Only the bed stood there, empty, dollless. Wait, hold up, Zenoba? Where'd you put the doll? Maybe Rudius thought Zenoba had gotten up earlier and was teaching it something. As he looked around, Zenoba emerged sluggishly from a pile of blankets in the corner of the room. I totally thought he did it. I legit, when I read this, I was like, that thing's gonna poke its head out from underneath the freaking covers. Oh my gosh, Zenoba banged Nanahoshi out of nowhere. I was like, no, we are not going that direction where they disassemble this thing, and then every time he runs into Nanahoshi, he's like doki doki for her, something like that. I thought this was gonna go super south here on out of nowhere, where Zenoba had a massive crush on Nanahoshi, and then Rudius had to rebuild the Nanahoshi doll just to appease him. But no, it disappeared.
Master, did you not turn off the automaton once it was in bed?
Turn it off? Just like that, Rudius' memories surged back. He definitely had it get dressed, then told it to lie down in its bed. He was sure of that. I think so? Turning off the doll required either command to turn off or to go dormant. The user had to put a hand on the magic stone in its chest and say the incantation. He had not done that. Find it!
Understood.
The two of them frantically hunted for the doll, but it was nowhere to be found, not inside the laboratory, nor was it right outside. It had vanished. Oh my gosh. Chapter 2, The Day the Doll Walked, Part 2. Yeah, now that I've actually recorded the first chapter, I'm feeling like I'm not going to get to the story. It's 3 chapters. This little story right here is 3 chapters, and I'm like, yeah, I don't think I'm going to get to this entire story, and that sucks. Going to leave it on a cliffhanger. We'll see. We'll see. That day, Elise was out shopping with her son, Clive. They went around the shops hand in hand. Elise had given birth and raised several children already. Ooh? I don't know if they mentioned that before. I don't know if that was in chapter 26's later segments or not. But she still enjoyed going out with her child's hand in hers. Clive looked a lot like her husband, Cliff. His hair was the same color, and he had Cliff's mouth. Even the way that he thought he was the best without any particular proof was identical. Because I'm a genius, of course. Elise remembered Cliff the way that he had been when she first met him and found herself smiling. Mom, it's a pumpkin. Let's buy a pumpkin. Pumpkin. So it is. Pumpkins are delicious this time of year. I don't care about that. Eating pumpkins makes you grow tall. Who told you that? Lucy. Lucy's a bad influence. Lucy's such a bad influence. Elise's son was a beautiful little boy. His eyes were just like Elise's, and there was no doubt that in the future, elf girls as well as human ones would swoon over him. The only problem was his height. Like his father, he was shorter than average. Clive seemed to have developed a bit of a complex about it. At home, he was always going on about how he wanted to be taller. What do you want to be so big for? It's a secret. Did he do the T? It's a secret? He's totally an elf. He's totally an elf. We have Fitz right here. Little Clive has turned into Fitz Senpai. Elise already knew the reason was a girl that was 2 years his senior. The aforementioned Lucy. He wanted her to think that he was cool. Here's to hoping you get bigger soon. Elise liked seeing her son acting like a typical little boy. Then she stopped. Huh? Elise's long ears had picked up a voice of someone she knew. Come on, sweetheart. This is how the world works. I do something for you, and you do something for me. I'm dying to hear what sounds your mouth can make. The voices came from an alley. Elise looked and saw a girl being held by 2 men at the back of a tavern. Amongst them was a face that she knew. Unusually for her, it didn't belong to either of the men. Come on, it's been a long time since he's been on the market. Come on. But this is just my voice. You can hear how it sounds. That's what you think. You got a much prettier voice in there. The girl didn't seem bothered by this, but from what Elise knew of her, she wasn't the type to welcome such overtures. Even if it didn't show on her face, she was probably in trouble. Elise put down her shopping bags and called out, Just a moment, you two. The men spun around at once. What's your problem? That girl is a friend of Rudius's. I'd go find someone else to bother if I were you. The 2 men slowly looked her up and down. Someone like you? And with your baby brother with you, you little slut. Baby brother? My, aren't you a charmer? She's so good at diffusing situations. She is so good at de-escalating situations. It's obviously, well, yes, it's sort of a charm for her because it makes her sound like she's very young. For Clive to be her little brother, she looks very young and youthful. But still, it's like she could totally get mad with that situation because they're now bringing her son in the situation. But she's good at diffusing and de-escalating right here. Elise cooed, putting her hand on her cheek and smiling coyly. Despite her teasing, she had already picked up that these 2 weren't from around here. They were probably roaming adventurers. Anyone from here would have backed off as soon as they heard Rudius's name. You 2, what am I going to do with you? Suddenly, Clive stepped out in front of her, his face bright red. He had found and picked up a stick while she wasn't looking. Don't you come near my mom. Clive, that's sweet, but Mama can handle these 2 by herself. Come back now. Really? Clive gaped as Elise scooped him up and put him down behind her, making note to shower him with praise later. Elise put her hand on her sword on her hip. Clive being a good boy. Clive like, I'll protect Mama. Dad told me to protect Mama. What do you mean you can handle this on your own? We're at A rank, you know. My, how impressive. You must be very talented to make A rank at such a young age. Puh, it was easy. Seems like you're pretty confident in yourself. Oh no, I'm afraid I'm quite ordinary. Yeah, the unfortunate thing, I think she points it out, the fact that she didn't have her shield. The men drew their swords. The blades were well worn. Elise had her sword with her for self-defense, but she wasn't carrying her trusty shield. I would assume that her sword is the one that she always had, right? The one that has like it's a magic sword, able to create the wind gust. I mean, these guys could have magic weapons too. I doubt it though, if they're A rank. A rank's high though. A rank is high though. I would assume that she had that sword long before she got to A rank. That was unfortunate. Depending on how competent her opponents were, she could be at a disadvantage in a 2-on-1 fight. Don't worry, sweetheart. Once I've roughed you up a little, I'll show you a good time. and Elise didn't draw her sword. The men, perhaps thinking that she was frightened, approached slowly, leering at her. And Elise waited until they were away from the girl, then took a deep breath. Eek! Help me! I'm being kidnapped! Her scream rang through the alley. The two men were startled. Oi! We ain't kidnapping no one! But the cry did no more than echo through the alley. No one came from the road that Elise and Clive had been on. Soon enough, the alley fell silent once more. Hey, you yell loud, but we're behind a tavern in the middle of the day. No one's coming. Come to my room, and I'll make sure you scream all you like. God damn, dude. Suddenly, the doors of the surrounding buildings flew open one after another. Bang, bang, bang. A number of men, covered in hair and wearing black coats with a design on the back that resembled a yellow tiger, stepped into the streets. Yep, there's a band. These were the soldiers of the Ruquagmire Mercenary Band, and one of their jobs was to deliver the liquor to the taverns. Upon seeing Elise, the men all began to call out at once. Mistress Ellen Elise, just who of the two do you think you're messing with? Thought you'd pick a fight with the Ruquagmire mercenaries? We're here to deliver you a beating. Around outlaws, or people who threatened one of their own, the well-mannered, peacekeeping mercenaries turned rough. I mean, that's sort of the nice thing that is the Ruquagmire Mercenary Band, is like they've been sort of designed to be very strict and very professional. And yeah, it's not as if there's really much they're going to be fighting about inside the town all the time. And they kind of specified that a lot of them were kind of rough guys. But again, putting them through some sort of training, being very strict upon them, having sort of this uniformity that they actually have, it kind of keeps them in line. But then eventually, somebody steps out and causes a problem, that rough side's coming back out. Yeah, one of their own. There was little more than 10 of them. Even if this was Rudius, he would have apologized the moment they had threatened him. Yep, he'd have been groveling on the ground by now. The two men, who stood there rooted in spot, took about 2 seconds to throw down their swords. Sorry about that. We had no idea you were someone important. We only got to town yesterday, you see. Hooray, Rudius' honor was safe. If these guys backed down, then Rudius was no coward. Of course, who wouldn't apologize if a crowd of extremely hairy men came running towards them? How do you want to deal with them, mistress? They haven't done any harm, so go easy on them. Teach them how things work around here. Ma'am, right. You two, come with me. We sort of got an appointment. Stop struggling. The Beastfolk men escorted the two adventurers into the tavern, and Elise watched them go, then went over to the girl. Nanahoshi, I haven't seen you for a while. Is it the day you wake up already? It is unusual for you to be in town, isn't it? Naturally, this girl was Nanahoshi. Nanahoshi nodded, looking totally unfazed. I woke up last night. You did? Well, for now, let's go somewhere else. It's terribly dull around here. Elise took Nanahoshi's hand, but then she noticed something strange. Nanahoshi, my goodness, did you cut your hair? She remembered Nanahoshi having long hair, but it was trimmed to the nape of her neck. Elise was puzzled. At her question, the corners of Nanahoshi's mouth curved up in a smile. There was something not quite natural about it. It was a smile of someone uncomfortable. This part right here is actually very, very interesting to me. What they sort of do over the course of the different individuals that this Nanahoshi bot is going to run into is each one of them sort of picks up on different things. Something doesn't feel right. Somebody picks on some sort of message there. Somebody sees what she does and goes, that's not quite Nanahoshi. Everybody has a feeling that something's off here. But I like how with Elise specifically, especially what they get into, there's an element here where whenever somebody goes through a trauma, it messes with them a lot. Depending on what sort of trauma you go through, how dire it is, and how you yourself handle it, it changes you. It makes you see things differently, and people around you will notice that you're not looking right. You look uncomfortable. And yes, people pick up on signs when somebody is trying to hide something. You act different. And I almost feel like with where this sort of goes, this actually makes sense that Elise is not quite wanting to immediately say, you're not Nanahoshi. Because it almost gives a sense that she feels something's off and she might have gone through a trauma and I need to be very careful about how I handle this. So I actually have a lot of respect for how Elise sees it. And this is, I would imagine, something that Elise has dealt with quite a bit. Again, they've always painted Elise as being sort of somebody that whenever somebody has gone through something, she's there to kind of comfort them. In her days of adventuring, she always dealt with a lot of problems. She's very good at diffusing situations, mishaps within parties and whatnot. She's very good with the women. So I can see her immediately jumping into big sis mode, basically. Big sis mode. It was a smile of someone uncomfortable, perhaps trying to laugh off something that they didn't want to talk about, or of someone plotting something. Elise, perceptive as ever, immediately had an idea of what was up. Is something going on? You're welcome to talk to me about it if you like. Are you free now? I have no critical task. Why don't we go find a cafe or sit down? Elise picked up her shopping and took Clive's hand. He looked a little sulky. Dear me, Clive, what's that about for? Are you disappointed that you didn't get to protect me? You should be protecting the girl you like, not your mom. Wait, Nanahoshi, whatever you're doing, are you two coming? Like, Nanahoshi just walks off. Nanahoshi bot. With Nanahoshi in tow, they headed for a nearby cafe. That really was a touch and go back there. Thank goodness we were in a spot where there was always someone nearby. It was a few minutes later, Elise and Nanahoshi were sitting opposite to each other in a cafe, each with identical glasses of fruit juice. Nanahoshi had copied Elise's order. Clive, incidentally, had ordered some slightly fancy sweets. The candied fruits were now affordable thanks to the recent drop in sugar prices. Nanahoshi's head and eyes turned this way and that as she looked around the shop. Perhaps it was her first time there. Now, what's happened? Due to the large number of vents, I am unable to return a single answer. Please refine your inquiry. Okay, that's extremely sus right there. Error 404. Did you always talk like that? Elise was puzzled, but she reasoned that people who had traumatic experiences often spoke differently afterwards. Again, that's sort of what I was talking about earlier. When someone felt stubborn, they spoke more stiffly. Again, you can't make the assumption. It's like she's in a position where she can't make an assumption. Well then, you should start from the beginning. From the beginning? That's right, the very beginning. Nanahoshi blinked twice. Then she began her story. I awoke last night. When I awoke, Master Zenoba and Master Rudius was there. Oh my, how very improper of them, trespassing upon a bedroom of a maiden. The two of them examined my unclothed body. They appeared extremely pleased. Damn, and now the misunderstanding's happening. Ugh. When I read that, I'm like, Rudius, you're screwed. Rudius, you're screwed. You better start explaining quick. They what? Following that, they examined every inch of my body, had me open my legs, and touch my chest. They then had a debate over whether to use me or not, before concluding that once they were satisfied, they would throw me away. They had me lie down on the bed, then left me there and went to sleep. So wrong. That is so wrong. That is so wrong. Hearing this was enough to make even Elise's thoughts freeze up for a moment. Elise of all people. Hearing something like this completely broke Elise of all people. A scene played out in her mind with Rudius and Zenoba leering over as they stripped Nanahoshi, while she slept before forcing her to wake up to service them. Elise had known many such men, so it wasn't hard to imagine. That was what I'm talking about. Literally, she's like, oh yeah, I think I've had a moment like that before. You didn't resist? Resistance is futile. Yes, if it was Rudius and Zenoba, I suppose it was. Was Lord Petagus not there? It was only the two of them. Elise wasn't really sure what Petagus's daily life was like, but he surely left his fortress sometimes. Was this the first time? Yes, however, it seems that Master Zenoba and Master Rudius planned and prepared it in advance, so you mean that they've been planning this for a long time? Super premeditated. The two of them would have no trouble finding out when Petagus was going out. If they were lucky and Petagus's excursion coincided with the day that Nanahoshi woke up, they could find that out easily too. Elise was silent. She was a level-headed woman, thanks to her abundant experience. She had developed the capacity to think coolly and act without anger. But even she couldn't help but be shaken by the betrayal of people she trusted. Not Rudius. Surely not. Zenoba, who would never so much as... Yeah, there's the part that makes it very unbelievable. Zenoba of all people. What? I guess Elise... Yes. Yeah, I mean, they spent quite a bit of time together, especially back when the whole situation with Nanahoshi originally happened, and they all got involved with the whole teleportation, or the summoning circle thing. But, yeah, Zenoba of all of them is like, that doesn't sound like Zenoba. Zenoba, who would not be much of a ladies' man, was one thing, but surely not Rudius, with his wives and his children who loved him, and he loved them right back. This was the Rudius who was ready to die fighting Orsted to protect his family. The Rudius who obeyed Edis in the bedroom. Him, do such things to Nanahoshi? Poor Nanahoshi, who was desperately searching for a way to return home. Part of Elise wanted to laugh at the absurdity. There had to be some mistake. Hadn't he given his wholehearted assistance to her as she toiled away? Hadn't he kept helping her, even when Silfie got jealous? Hadn't he gone to the demon continent and fought the demon king Etoff in order to rescue her? But look at Nanahoshi's face, Elise told herself. Again, it's like the whole crappy thing. Because of her expression being so robotic, the assumption is trauma. She can't not believe it. And it's like, I think of all this entire stupid segment of everybody meeting this Nanahoshi, this one's the most interesting because it's immediately it's got to be a trauma. I can't not see this in front of me. Apart from the odd smile earlier, she had been expressionless as a doll the whole time. Nanahoshi wasn't laughing or crying, and her hair had been shorn off at the shoulders. Though she might not seem the type, Nanahoshi actually took quite good care of her hair. Now it was disheveled. Elise had never been close to Nanahoshi, but they'd known each other for a long time. She was certain she knew Nanahoshi's expressions. Elise had never seen her so shocked before. It was, of course, unthinkable that Nanahoshi would make up such a story. Elise didn't know what to believe. Perhaps it was some sort of trap to ensnare Rudius and Zenoba. Yes, of course. There was a number of magic items that can alter one's appearance, though even using such an item, it would be impossible to infiltrate the heart of the Chaos Breaker to have one's way with Nanahoshi. I'm wondering if they ever implied that with the shape-shifting rings that, like, Ariel was using, if the individual had to be nearby. Because this is a good argument. Because one of the things they were talking about with Emily specifically, I think they were mentioning it was best for this person to be her double because they had long hair. So if someone were to use something like that with like those rings, only having short hair, I wonder if it would actually not have the long hair in that case. I think they were talking about body size and whatnot being a big factor, or body shape. But I'm curious if they would have to be nearby. Because that would be a good point if somebody was trying to infiltrate the Chaos Breaker and was disguising themselves as Nanahoshi. But I'm not sure what that has to do with ensnaring Rudius and Zenoba by infiltrating Chaos Breaker to have way with Nanahoshi. That's where it kind of goes off the rails. To pull it off, one would have to have some idea of Pegasus' movements and be able to freely come and go from the floating fortress. That only left a few candidates. Elise was more confused than she had been in years. She knew only one thing for sure. That must have been awful. She moved to sit next to Nanahoshi, then hugged her tight. Oh, I get what they're talking about earlier there. Okay, somebody disguised themselves as Rudius and Zenoba and went into the Chaos Breaker to have their way with Nanahoshi to ensnare Rudius. That is, okay. I get the whole confused thing now. Girl, you are going down a rabbit hole. That is a crazy amount of effort to ensnare Rudius and Zenoba. Gee, criminy. She moved to sit next to Nanahoshi, then hugged her tight. She could tell the girl's heart had been damaged. Master Elise, there's more. That's all right. No need to say more. You were so brave to tell me those awful things, even if it was a little hard to believe. Oh, what am I saying? Such a betrayal of trust is quite unforgivable. I shall make sure that Rudius and Zenoba are punished. Thus Elise decided that for now she would comfort Nanahoshi in her anguish and put off getting to the truth of the matter until later. Did Master Rudius commit a crime? Yes, he did a very bad thing. What sort of thing? Well, he hurt you. In fact, not just you. It may be that his wives, that Silfie and Roxy and Edis are hurt too. I am unharmed. It's your heart that he hurt. My heart. This is so wrong. It is such a very serious subject, but it's so wrong. As Elise hugged Nanahoshi, she suddenly realized that something wasn't quite right. There was a wrong feeling to this girl. Elise had embraced a lot of people, so she ought to know. She'd never hugged anyone like this before. I like how Elise's experience with hugging a lot of people is coming into effect. I have hugged many people. She'd never hugged anyone like this before. She couldn't put her finger on exactly what it was, but it almost felt like she wasn't a person. A shout rang out in the quiet of the cafe. I found it! Elise looked over to the door and saw a man in a dark gray robe pointing at Elise's table. It was Rudius. Zenoba was right behind him, and they were accompanied by a group of Rukwag mercenaries. Seize it! Elise gripped Nanahoshi more tightly and was about to shout out to him to wait when the girl in her arms made her move. Displaying strength Elise never dreamed she possessed, Nanahoshi threw off her embrace, then flipped over the table and leaped out a nearby window. With a crash, Nanahoshi was gone. She was terrifyingly fast, easily as swift as a Saint Tier swords fighter. No one would have kept up with her, Even the mercenaries looked dumbfounded. Chairman, Sir Zenoba, it's too fast. We can't catch it.
Of course not. It's a doll created by my master. No common warrior would hope to match its strength and speed.
Okay, not a priority right now. We're just like, shh. Not important right now. You don't have to fluff me up right now. Let's get to the point. Okay, not the priority right now. It seems like it hasn't learned to move covertly yet. For now, send people to hunt for it. Once we find it, Zenoba and I will find a way to catch it. As he gave his orders to the mercenaries, he came over to Elise, looking exhausted. Clive stared up at him, wide-eyed, with an empty fork in his hand. I forgot that Clive was there. The entire time this is happening, Clive's just sitting there, eating his sweets. Rudius patted him on the head, then checked him for injuries. Then he turned to Elise and held out his hand. Sorry about that, Elise. Are you all right? It didn't hurt you. No, of course not. Taking his hand, she got to her feet, then asked, what was that all about? Well, it's not much to tell. Elise relaxed a little as he explained. I knew I'd misunderstood something, she thought. Something had to be off to think that Rudius and Zenoba would go through that much trouble to go after Nanahoshi of all people. The girl that got away, one of the girls that got away from Rudius, suddenly out of nowhere, him and Zenoba's going after her after this long time. Cutting over to Edis. At home, it was Edis' job to take Leo and the kids for a walk. She also taught the sword to the children, as well as some of the students at the university. But when it came to housework, her only job was walking. It works for her, fitness and all that stuff. If she didn't have anything else to do, she went out with them after lunch. Obviously, bringing all the kids would be dangerous, so she usually took 2 or 3 of them at most. When Leo was there, Lada climbed on his back as a matter of course, so in reality, Edis only had to keep an eye on 1 or 2 kids at a time. Like every single time Leo goes, Lada always goes with her. That day, Lada and Sieg were both on Leo's back, and Edis had a little Lily on her shoulders. My gosh, Lily finally exists in the story. I think it's the first time we've mentioned Lily in like forever. They would walk into town, and Edis would watch while the kids played on their favorite spots. This was her routine. Until not so long ago, she'd taken Lucy, Lada, and Edis, and sometimes Clive too. Back then, the local boys would like to pull on Lada's hair until Lucy made them stop. I'm gonna bring that up again. Oof. Lucy stepping in. And again, they mentioned previously that Lucy didn't like them doing it, but Lada told her don't worry about it. She kept telling them don't worry about it. But no, this is saying that yes, Lucy stepped in and stopped them. But there's the problem. No matter how many times Lucy steps in there to stop them from messing with Lada, they're just going to come mess with her again the moment that Lucy's not there. Because Lada's not doing anything about it. Lately, though, maybe thanks to Edis' training, Lada started fighting back. Good girl. Edis would turn away for a moment. Then she would look back to find Lada standing there with a scratch on her face or a bloody nose, while the boys who'd gone after her were crouching nearby and crying. Yeah, it does say it. I forgot that it says it. Her eyes would meet Edis, her face stoic but defiant, and she would hold up 2 fingers in a V for victory. V. Edis never knew what to say in response. When she was little, she'd often been scolded for getting into fights and making her opponents cry. Nobles' daughters weren't supposed to fight, they told her. If someone said something mean to her, it was best for her to use her words. So whenever Lada got into a fight, Edis would hesitate for a second. Should she discipline her? In the end, Edis usually ended up complimenting her instead. Seeing the quiet Lada, proud of herself after fighting off a bully, it seemed impossible not to say, well done. That's my girl. On the other hand, Edis would have been furious if Lada made someone weaker than herself cry, like Sieg. She would spank her until her bottom was glowing if she did that. But the boys at the park were bigger and older than Lada, so praise was earned, Edis thought. Maybe she would have considered that, given Lada would be starting school the following year. It wasn't good to only tell her that she'd done well defending herself, but Edis didn't have that kind of foresight. Interesting. I mean, it's noting there that Lada is going to be going to school next, university is next. I guess it's implying there that it wasn't good to only tell her that, but also to tell her other things to kind of, yes, keep her in check. Like, don't always just say, good job, because then she's going to think that that's a positive reinforcement to do it over and over again, to actively seek it out and not try to look for other methods to get around the situation. Diffuse the situation, leave the situation, don't always use your fists, whatever. But I like this mindset. Edis is obviously trying in her own mind to figure out what to do. And this is cool to kind of see how Edis is handling the children. That yes, her whole goal here is to train them swordsmanship, and yes, take them out for walks and protect them. That's her role. Her role in the family is protect, train, yeah. And walkies. And walkies. I'm sorry. Walkies. Forgot walkies. But like this, because she's seeing that there's this thing happening. And like I said earlier, Lucy stepping in is never going to make them stop that. Lada has to step up instead. This is totally a Rudius and Silfie situation here. When Rudius left, what happened? The guys went after Silfie again. She had to learn to fight herself. She learned to protect herself and stand up against the bullies. And she got stronger. The moment that Lucy's not there, Lada's going to be right in their crossfires again. But she didn't care. She didn't care. We're seeing here, though, now she's finally kicking back. And Edis is saying, I was told when I was young, never allow that. Never do that. A girl should never fight. Never fight. Well, for one, Lada's not a noble girl. I mean, Rudius has sort of a noble position, but Rudius left nobility. Edis left nobility. They all left nobility. They're not nobility. And Edis is almost putting that same experience upon Lada, but she chooses not to. No, she's allowing it to happen. That's good. Proud of her. She did a good job. She fought against the bullies. Just never do it to somebody weaker than you. Don't become the bully, basically. She'd be furious if she ever did that to someone weaker than herself, like Sieg. She doesn't want Lada to be the bully, but she praises when Lada steps up against the bullies. It would have been interesting to see if Edis had a perspective of why they're bullying Lada. I mean, Lucy's obviously pointing at the hair as being the big thing, and the assumption there is because she looks different. She has blue hair. It's different than everybody else here. Today, they weren't heading to the usual park, so no fights for Lada. Edis hadn't changed the destination for any particular reason. She just felt like it. Don't go too far. They come to the river on the outskirts of town. Lada and Sieg splashed around naked in the river as they played with Leo. Edis focused most of her attention on Lily, who had only recently just taken her first steps. Lily was nervous, perhaps because the river was new to her. Reaching out, she hesitantly touched it, before shrieking at the coldness of the water. Mama. What, are you scared? It's cold. The non-answer made Edis chuckle. She patted Lily on the head. Lily looked just like Lada, but she was a little quieter. That being said, she was more curious. That's oddity there, because it almost feels like Lada's not very, talkative either. Again, I would assume that's because most of her conversations happening in her head, again, with Leo or with Zenith. She was fascinated by anything new, or that she hadn't seen before. I love how they're already painting this. I'm sorry for stopping every freaking line on doing this. I love how they're kind of already painting Lily as being a very inquisitive person. Basically pointing out the fact that she's always got a curious look. She's always observing things. She's always fascinated by new things that she hadn't seen before. That will definitely go into play for what they're kind of painting Lily to be. If I remember correctly from the last volume, they talked about how Lily took over the armor. If I remember correctly, this shows that she's going to be a very inquisitive type, always looking into things, always experimenting things, always researching things, always seeking knowledge. Mama, Sparkles. For example, she was just found something. Sparkles. It's sparkly. Edis followed Lily's pointing finger and saw something that shone brighter than the light on the surface of the water. A fish, about the length of Edis's middle finger, wriggling this way and that. It's a fish. Squish. Not squish. Fish. Fish, got it? Try saying it. Fish. Fish. Mama, get it. Get the fish. Okay, you watch me. I love seeing Edis be a mommy. This is so good. I don't think we've ever seen this kind of stuff with Edis. Yeah, I don't think we've ever seen this kind of Edis. This is like the first time ever seeing like a Mama Edis moment. Jeez, dude. Red Mama right here. This is straight up Red Mama right here. Okay, you watch me. Edis rolled up her sleeves, then fixed her eyes on the river. A few seconds later, there was a whoosh and a slap as a spray flew up from the surface of the water. In the blink of Lily's eye, Edis had a fish in her fist. The fish didn't seem to know what was going on. Its eyes were wide, and its mouth gaped open and shut. Here. Oh, Lily exclaimed as Edis put the fish in her hands. At this, the fish seemed to at last realize that it was a state of emergency. It wriggled and leaped. It flipped out of Lily's hands and dropped back into the river with a splash. The fish ran away. You're right. Just then, Edis sensed a presence behind her. She turned around. Hold on, something's coming. Sucks. We're getting a cute Edis Mama moment right here. A cute Red Mama moment right here. And it gets interrupted. This is so cute. I love this. This is such a different side of Edis. Something was approaching in the direction of the town. And very fast. It might be Rudius in the magic armor version 2. Or else someone as fast as her. Leo, get the two out of the river and dressed. Leo, perhaps sensing it too, replied with a woof. then nosed Lada on the back. Lada went obediently. She could communicate with Leo, so she understood the situation right away. Sieg whined a bit about wanting to play longer, but when Lada pulled his hand, he reluctantly got out of the water, then started to dry off with the towels they had brought. Lada, help Sieg get dressed. Sieg had only just learned how to dress himself, but he still struggled with each button, so he'd take ages without help. Edis was tense. She didn't sense hostility from whoever was coming towards them, but it was fast enough that, while the kids were in tow, she wouldn't quite be able to outrun it. If it turned out to be an enemy, she could probably beat them, but it was still better to prioritize getting the kids to safety. She put the 3 of them on Leo's back, then hold the enemy off herself. They also weren't far from Orsid's office, where North God Kalman III and Dragon God Orsid lived. If they could get there, they'd definitely be safe. When Edis saw the approaching figure, she let out a sigh of relief at the familiar face of the girl with black hair. I mean, technically right here, we're already getting a pretty big, red flag that Nanahoshi is that fast running towards them. I mean, he doesn't really get into it, but you could have the assumption that she just has some magic boots or something like that from Orsted. She's able to move really, really fast, but still. Oh, it's you. Hey, Nanahoshi. Nanahoshi had been about to run straight past them, but at the sound of her name, she stopped abruptly and looked at Edis. Good morning. If it's not an inconvenience, may I ask you your name? It's Edis. What, did you forget? Master Edis. I will remember. Edis felt something was off. Yeah, big red flag right there. Who are you? May I ask your name? Edis felt something off. And now I see Nanahoshi, out of all of them, probably having the biggest struggle with knowing Nanahoshi and her moods and her actions. Because, one, Edis doesn't really have much care for really anybody besides Rudius and family. Nanahoshi's the least of her concerns, not a threat or anything like that. And technically, Edis was the last one to join the family, and Nanahoshi could have been coming by every now and then to visit the house, to steal the bath. But very quickly after she got there, Nanahoshi would leave and, go into sleep. Nanahoshi's hair was short, she was fast, and she didn't sound like herself. Yep, those are 3 things that easily can pick up on. Again, I could say that a magic item can make her go fast. She just cut her hair, but she didn't sound like herself. But Edis wasn't that close to Nanahoshi, so she didn't have a good idea what Nanahoshi's normal behavior was like. It probably wasn't a big deal. She was never one to get hung up on details. I mean, it's actually a good thing to get hung up on those details because, again, somebody disguised. You're really zooming along. What's up? Someone chasing you? Yes. Correction. No. Nanahoshi looked over her shoulder. Not anymore. I was going to say she's trying to lie right now, but no, it's just literally never mind. No, not anymore. Behind her was a wide and empty plain. It appears I have outrun them. Oh, Mama, Mama. Edis glanced down and saw Lily cling into Nanahoshi's leg. Lily patted Nanahoshi's calves, eyes sparkling. She let out a cry of delight and beamed as Nanahoshi lifted her. Good morning, said Nanahoshi. Ha ha. Lily giggled in response. Then she grabbed Nanahoshi's hair and tugged on it, patted her cheeks, then stroked her nose. Edis had no idea why Lily had taken to Nanahoshi like this. Whatever it was, she didn't want to impose on her, so she took Lily back from Nanahoshi and put her on her shoulders. Mama, want some? Lily reached out to Nanahoshi. Don't be rude. Lily grumbled, but Edis did not put her down. Nanahoshi watched them, then lifted up the lock of her hair. Is this what you want? Yeah, Lily mumbled with a little nod. Without warning, Nanahoshi yanked out a few strands of hair and held them out to Lily. Here you are. Yay! Lily looked happily. Edis had no idea why. She decided it had to be because the black hair was uncommon. I didn't really notice this the first time I was kind of breaking this all down, but Lily specifically goes up, starts yelling Mama and slapping her leg, and then when she picks her up, she starts grabbing at her face and saying Mama. Now, being a little bit of being a little dorky here, yes, there's a side of me that thinks it's because Lily so badly wants Nanahoshi to join the family. She wants Nanahoshi to be the next Mama. She knows, like everybody else, that Nanahoshi needs to be a part of Rudius' harem. There, right there. Lily sees Nanahoshi as the next Mama. We're going to bring Mama into the picture. But no, I mean, I can see it being an idea of because the black hair is kind of like, a lot of demons, but it's not necessarily like Roxy specifically. So why does Lily see Nanahoshi as a Mama? I can see her just seeing, I guess, Nanahoshi's figure, more petite, smaller, see her as being similar to Roxy. The other 2 things that I'm kind of like brainstorming on right now is, does one Does she have something, a material of her is from Roxy? Like, did Rudius use strands of hair or something like that from the combs and got some of Roxy's hair? And so she senses that hair? Or two, does Lily sense something from an artificial robot when it comes to the Magurdian's abilities? I don't think they've yet got into if Lily has, similar to Lada, has gotten the Magurdian ability to read minds. I don't think they've talked about it at all yet, so I'm assuming not. But again, could she read something in Robo Nanahoshi that normal people wouldn't? It does imply later on that Lada and Leo's got this figured out already. Like, very quickly. They've figured it out. It's interesting. I don't know. It's interesting. What about her makes Lily so quickly attached to her? May I ask you a question, Master Edis? What is it? Are you the Edis who is Master Rudius' wife? Yes, I am. Edis answered, puffing out her chest. It did make her feel a little proud to be called that. She'd given birth to his first son, and here she was looking after their children. Yep, she sure was. Will knowing of my existence make you angry with Master Rudius? Your existence? I'm not going to get mad just because you're there. Edis replied tentatively, unsure what Nanahoshi was asking. Nanahoshi was Rudius' friend. She wasn't going to get angry just because he talked to her. If he had made a move on her, or if he said he wanted her to be his fourth wife, then she might be a little bit angry. Only a little, though. So right there, Edis is approving. At least it gives a little sense there that she's not, like, 100% on it. Like, it's still going to bug her. And that could partly be because that's one less night that she's able to spend with Rudius. Another person that's in the queue line that she's not too happy about, but it shows at least there's a jealousy there, just not wanting somebody else to get in the picture, of course. But she's open for it. What about Master Silfie and Master Roxy then? They won't. Oh, wait. An old memory of Silfie suddenly came to her mind. Silfie did once say that she couldn't, like, accept Nanahoshi. Accept in what sense? No idea. But the girl really loves Rudius, so she's got to have her reasons. Edis loved Rudy and had no problem saying so, but she had to respect Silfie's sheer devotion. Silfie would put up with anything, even to the point of giving up who she was, if it were for Rudius' sake. Edis would die for Rudius in battle, but that was who she was, and what she wanted. She wasn't very good at doing anything that she didn't want to do, not even for Rudius' sake. Silfie was different. Silfie would set aside what she wanted for him. Edis respected that. Except for Nanahoshi. She'd give up on everything except for Nanahoshi and Rudius going to school with Lucy. Very well. I wish to talk to Master Silfie. Where might I find her? Pretty sure she's at home today. Understood. Thank you very much for answering my questions. Nanahoshi bowed, twisted her mouth into a smile, then spun around and set off back towards the town at a walking pace. Surprised she's not darting. What was that about? Edis folded her arms, planted her feet, shoulder winked apart, then snorted. Edis has started imitating this pose lately. No doubt. No doubt that boy gonna start doing that pose. Mama. Edis turned around. She could just see blue and green hair poking up from behind Leo. Right. It was Lada and Sieg. She'd forgotten to make them say hello to the family friend. Had that been wrong? Usually Leo came up to people that they knew of his own initiative, and she remembered to make them do polite greeting then. He'd hung back this time. As Edis puzzled over this, Lada said, "That wasn't Nanahoshi." The words inspired in Edis a sense of unease that couldn't be put into words. Her mouth tightened. Up on her shoulders, Lily stretched out the hairs Nanahoshi had given her with a twang. She had to get home immediately. No, the kids were with her. Change of plans. We're going to office. You two, get on Leo's back. Yeah. Lada picks up on it immediately. Lada and Leo just picked up on it immediately. And again, I would assume that'd be because Leo just picks up on the summoning circle. Picks up on the mana, whatever in there. But yeah, the big concern here, obviously, immediately is, Silfie's a target. There's only one person that has a problem, and it's Silfie. I need to go talk to Silfie. Peace out. For now, she'd get the kids somewhere secure. Then she'd go home. Having made up her mind, Edis put Lada and Sieg on Leo's back, then began walking towards the office. An opposing atmosphere was hanging over the office when Edis arrived. A number of mercenaries that she'd recognized were loitering up front. Along with them, she spotted Zenoba, Julie, Elise, Clive, and Northgod Kalman III, Alexander Ryback. Though the usual sense of repulsion she felt was absent. Orsted must have been out. She's like, I don't sense that nasty presence. Orsted must be out. Edis, what are you doing here? Rudius came rushing from the crowd. Edis was relieved to see him. At the same time, she became certain that she was about to uncover the secret of the unease that she had felt earlier. We met someone strange on our walk. A wary look came over Rudius' eyes. Who was it? She looked a lot like Nanahoshi. Rudius made a face like he wanted to shout. That was Lupin. Lupin? Lupin? What is Lupin? He itched to ask what happened, but his concern for Edis came first. Right, but nothing happened to you then. You're not hurt? The kids are all fine. Rudius looked down with a worried expression at Lada, Sieg, and Lily, who was still twanging the black hair. She really likes that hair. She got a hold in the hair. Ding, 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 ding. Did they ever say what the hair was made of? Again, she could just sense like the demon blood, and if it has, again, the immortal demon blood in it. What about you, Edis? You're not hurt? Once he'd seen the kids were unharmed, Rudius began to check Edis over for injuries. He examined her from head to toe, touched her face, took her by the shoulders, turned her around. Just as he reached to squish her breast, her fist hit his chin with a crack. So her fists were okay. I'm fine, as you can see. Yeah. She didn't do anything to us. Leo realized that she was fake. So, we came here for now. Edis looked at Leo. For some reason, Lada looked smug. She flared her nostrils with a huff. Like the baddie squad over there. Like the total baddie squad over there. Edis patted her on the head, then turned back to Rudius. So, who was that? Well, Rudius explained what had happened. The doll he and Zenoba were working on had escaped. They found signs that the teleportation circle had been used, so they determined that it was in the magic city of Soraya. They used the magic circle, woke up Julie, who was dozing the way away at the workshop, then had the Ruquag Mercenary band begin their search. Thanks to Elise's scuffle, they managed to locate it, only to lose it again. They got word that it was heading out of the city, so Rudius used his eye of distant sight to look out from the city walls. That was when he spotted it heading towards the direction of the office. Guessing the office was its destination, Rudius had gotten there first. Yeah, that's kind of an oddity there. Why was it going to the office? Well, it was looking for Rudius' wives. So I guess she could have asked somebody, and some random person said, oh, one of them, Edis, they just left town. And so she just went out that direction. Then as they were watching the direction they expected the doll to come from, Edis had showed up. She didn't seem that bad to me. Maybe not right now. But if we don't find it quick, there's no telling what might happen. Rudius' voice was resolute. In actuality, he was convinced that the doll had a flaw. It had several laws inscribed into its core concerning human safety, obedience to orders, and self-protection, the so-called 3 laws of robotics. Every time they gotta use that. Somebody make a 4 one. Next time somebody wants to make a story like this with the 3 robotic laws, make it 4. Make it 4. Do something different. It had ignored its orders and run away. That meant that, at the very least, there was a flaw in the obedience to the orders part. For now, all it had done was talk to Elise and Edis. No one had been hurt, but it would be wishful thinking to assume that it was because the safety for humans law was working. I kind of want to go back now and look in that whole discussion between Rudius and Zenoba. If at some point during that discussion, somewhere in there it could be implied the idea that she needs to go out and look into this. Again, we're going to find out, obviously, this thing just doesn't want to be destroyed. Is trying to find a way to avoid that. That's why she's trying to figure out about the family and the wives not wanting her to be around. They didn't break a law. It was following orders in a sense. I mean, obviously it can come down to simply the self-protection part. In order to not be disassembled, it has to find out a way to make it to where it could be around. If that was also malfunctioning, there was no way of knowing what might trigger a killing spree. Edis, could you tell me more about what you talked about? I mean, it was just a small talk. I think it said... Edis thought back to her conversation with a doll and answered. Rudius' expression grew more and more strained as she talked. When he took his own conversation with the doll together with Elise and Edis's, a theory had come to him to explain this behavior. With Elise, he had repeatedly asked about Rudius' wives. Last night, Rudius had said that he would scrap it because his wives would be angry. The doll had heard him. The obedience to order law might not have been working, but the self-protection law was. That made sense, therefore, that it would take defensive action. What would that look like? Eliminating whoever was trying to eliminate it. As far as it knew, the enemy trying to eliminate it was Rudius' wives. The one who would dispatch it is Zenoba and Rudius, but perhaps this doll hadn't attacked them because they already registered as its masters. It seemed contradictory, but if the doll had a bug, contradictory behavior was to be expected. The doll was identifying and locating Rudius' wives. It had to be considering taking them out first. On the other hand, Edis should have been a target for elimination, but it only talked to her. Did that mean the theory was wrong? Not necessarily. The question it asked Edis indicated that it was investigating which of his wives to eliminate. Which, in other words, was the greatest obstacle to it. Silfie was Priority number one, basically. It probably wanted to take care of that one before the others. Its conversation with Edis had made it all too obvious who the threat was. At the end, it said it wanted to talk to Silfie and headed back down. Rudius' face went pale. Silfie's in danger, he cried, starting to run frantically off towards the house, but he quickly did an about-face and returned to the office, where he took a deep breath. Good boy. Not G-Rick. No, hold on. Chill. Do this right. He's grown a lot. I'm sorry, there's a big sign that Rudius has grown. Rudius looked around, telling himself to stay calm. Here outside the office were the Mercenary band. Zenoba, Julie, Alec, Elise, Clive, and his kids. First, Rudius nodded to Alec, who looked like he had nothing to do. Hey, you useless boy. Alec, I'm going to leave the kids and Julie with you. That all right? Yeah, that's fine. The children's safety came first. If Orsa was around, Rudius would have asked him and give Alec a different job. But as he wasn't, this would have to do. They ought to be safe with Alec watching over them. I'm like, you trust him way more than I do. I mean, with the kids with Alec, I trust that nothing else will harm them. But do I trust Alec not harming the kids or just walking away? Different story. No, I don't trust Alec. He's too juvenile. Julie would have been fine, given that the doll had walked straight past her as she slept, but he had the feeling that he also mentioned that Julie was against the doll. True. During the conversation at the workshop, it was better to have her stay behind. Edis and Elise, you go to the school. It's possible that she might go for Roxy. Some of the mercenaries are already heading that way, so you can rendezvous with them. Gotcha. Very well. Linnea was on her way to the school with a search party of mercenaries. Edis had said the doll wanted to find Silfie, but really, there was no way of knowing what it would do. It was better to send reinforcements just in case. Half of the mercenaries are to go back to Aisha and report what happened. Till if worse comes worse, I might ask Sir Petagus for aid.
Yes, sir.
If he could get Petagus to help, then Armanfi could have the doll captured in seconds. He hadn't expected the problem to blow up this quickly. To his regret, he delayed getting word out to people, including the ones at home. That said, there was no guarantee Petagus would agree to help. I want the other half of the mercenaries to go back to Zenoba's workshop.
Understood.
While the doll was running around all over the place, it was possible that it was a diversion, and its real goal was to get away from Rudius. Part of him wouldn't mind letting the danger run away, but he had made it. He was responsible to see us through to the end. Zenoba, come with me to my house, so we can make sure that Silfie and the others are safe.
Very well, master.
All right, everyone, let's go. At Rudius's order, everyone dispersed. The only ones left the office were the children, Leo, Julie, and Alec. After their parents had disappeared, they looked anxious. How about we play a game until your dad gets back, kids? Alex said, smiling at them. I want a picture of that. That sounds so creepy. Mr. Main Character right here is left with the kids. Main Character Syndrome boy over here is left with the kids. Let's play a game, kids. What kind of games does Alec play? I better get a side chapter of the games that Alec played with them. That's chapter 2. Let me look at this. I think I'm way not going to be able to handle this chapter 3 with this. Probably shouldn't, but we'll try. Chapter 3, The Day the Doll Walked, Part 3. Meanwhile, Silfie was looking after the fourth daughter, Christina. Well done, Chris. Let's go and come to Mama. Yeah, come here. Unlike Lily, who had started toddling early, Chris had struggled to walk, even while holding onto things. The moms had been working with her. Unfortunately, Chris still didn't seem to like it. She shook her head, lips wobbling. Come here, Chris. You know, 1 step, 2 step. Silfie encouraged her. Mama, come here. No, Chris, look, I'm right here. Chris started fussing. She wasn't actually incapable. She was just being a baby. Finally, with a strangled sound, she closed her eyes, burst into a toddling run into Silfie's arms. Good girl. Well done, Chris. Proud of you. Silfie hugged Chris like she always did and stroked her hair. Chris clung to her tightly, sniffling. While Lily was active and full of curiosity, Chris liked to be cuddled. Moreover, she didn't like going outside. Edis took her out now and then, but usually ended up coming back straight away because Chris stuck to her like glue and started wailing at every little thing. Nowadays, she mostly stayed at home while the others went out for their walks. Interesting. Apparently, Christina's very much an indoorsy person. Could be a shut-in. Taken after the father on that shut-in side, right? Oh, Chris, you need a lot of attention. I wonder where you get that from. She definitely meant Rudius. Mama, Dad at home? No, Dad not home yet. Chris was a daddy's girl. She cried all the time ever since she had been born. When Rudius picked her up, she stopped right away. The total opposite of Edis. Yeah, technically. Technically the absolute opposite. I mean, technically Edis is getting Rudius' side, doesn't want to be around Rudius, whereas Chris is getting Edis' side, always wants to be around Rudius. Lately, Rudius' lap had become her exclusive spot. Wah! Chris suddenly cried out. Then Silfie heard a noise from the front door. Someone must have come home. Dada? I don't know. I don't think it's Dada. Rudius had been out since the previous day. He hadn't given her exact day that he'd come home, but he said it would take 2 or 3 days. Probably not him. Sis? It's a bit early for your sisters, too. Roxy or Lucy wouldn't be back from the university just yet, and it was too early for Aisha, who was off with the Mercenary band. Could it be Edis, back from her walk? But she had taken Sieg, who'd want to play, so they'd be out for a little longer. What about Lilia, who'd gone out shopping with Edis along to help her? No, they just left. Lilia might have forgotten something and came back to get it. It could also be Zenith. Silfie thought that she'd be asleep in her room, but she may have slipped out into the garden. As she ran through the possibilities, Silfie sat Chris on a cushion and then said, Stay here, Chris. Feeling a little puzzled, she headed for the front door. It was ajar, but it wasn't the door that drew her attention. Someone was standing in front of it. The afternoon sun shone over the open door, illuminating the black-haired girl from behind. Most people familiar with her might have said, Nanahoshi, and offered a friendly greeting. But the moment that Silfie laid eyes on her, she frowned. You aren't Nanahoshi, are you? The girl contorted her mouth into a smile, and the shadow casted by the light behind her. It looked like an uncanny slit had opened in her face. No, I am not. How do you know? Nanahoshi comes to our house a lot. When she opens the door, she has a routine. She knocks twice. Then, if no one answers, she hesitates a little. Then opens the door with a crack and quietly calls out, Is anyone home? As she spoke, she concentrated mana into her right hand. It was an obvious thing to do for Silfie. Something had invaded the house, wearing a face of someone she knew. For the moment, she didn't feel any hostility in front of her. She even spoke politely, though there was no feeling in her voice. Silfie wasn't naive enough to assume that this meant that it was a friend. Who are you? If you're one of the man god's servants, you'll have to get through me. As she spoke, her mind was racing. How could she distract the girl in front of her so that she can get Chris from the living room and Zenith from the upstairs and escape? She'd run through what she'd done in the event of a home invasion numerous times. Could she really pull it off? She hadn't noticed any sounds of battle. But maybe Bite, who was growing on the gatepost, was already dead. Just now, she put mana into her ring to signal Edis and Roxy. Would they notice? She wondered if Orsted or Alec was over at the office and was aware of the situation. Should she run? Or should she stall for time? Silfie shoved all these thoughts away behind a stony expression as she stared at the girl. I do not have a name yet, the girl said in response to Silfie's question. Huh? May I ask what your name is? I'm Silfie Greyrat, she replied automatically, taken aback by a sudden question. You must be Master Silfie, Master Rudius' wife. That's right. Silfie confirmed it reflexively. I'm getting ahead of myself. Yes, I do get a kick out of the fact that, again, the moment the door comes open, the moment that she sees this girl, she's like, you're not Nanahoshi. Again, there's always a sequence of stuff that Nanahoshi does. And yes, of everybody that has run into Nanahoshi so far, Elise, Edis, that's it so far. That's it so far. Elise and Edis. Everybody that has run into Nanahoshi so far does not know Nanahoshi as much as Silfie. And there's like 3 different parts of this. One, technically, Rudius is the only one that has been around Nanahoshi the most. But Silfie's like right behind her. Because the moment that Rudius started helping out Nanahoshi, Silfie was coming in there and helping out Nanahoshi. They were both helping her out quite a bit with the whole situation with the summoning circle and everything. And even afterwards, once Rudius got married with Silfie, she was still visiting the house on a regular basis. So Silfie has welcomed her into home so many times. She's been around her way too much. She's been around her a lot. The second part of it is, yes, kind of funny, but it goes in that whole realm of my biggest disappointment in Silfie overall. She doesn't like... she's always observing Nanahoshi a lot. Nanahoshi has a lot of Silfie's attention. And that's really around the idea of, what is a secret that you and Rudius always had? She had this massive question mark for the longest time of what sort of correlation the two you have. You both seem to have something very in common. You said this one thing that stood out to me, that you're both from the same land. But that ain't right, because I'm from where he was born. It doesn't make any sense. There was always a special tie between Rudius and Nanahoshi that I think for the longest time she was extremely jealous about. I mean, we've seen a bit of it from the Fit Senpai chapters where she's very jealous of Nanahoshi. I think that sort of played into her not wanting Nanahoshi as part of the harem. I think that was really the push away constantly, was that jealousy and not wanting them around each other. I always did also think there was another part of it where, again, she doesn't want to accept people into the family unless they both loved each other. If she's seen that Rudius loved Nanahoshi and Nanahoshi loved Rudius, I think she would have eventually caved. I think she would eventually allow it. But I don't know. We never really knew. We never really found out, unfortunately. So she's always watching her. There's that second aspect there. Did I say 3? I don't know. There's these many elements that I think really does define for her, oh, this ain't right. This can't be her. Who's this person in front of me? It is also interesting to see sort of the system they've kind of developed for home invasion. Again, because they've always had the threat of the man god sending disciples. So like most family households anyways, they're going to have some sort of plan for fire escape, for home invasion, that kind of stuff. But yes, it sucks that whenever it does finally happen, it kind of, in a lot of cases, it's going to go out the window because it's good to prepare, but a lot of it's going to go out the window because you never know exactly where everybody's going to be in the house. In this situation, she's at the front door, this invader's at the front door, you have Chris's over here, you have Zenith's up there. Did you plan for that? But it's cool that they actually have the rings in order to communicate with each other. It's kind of surprising that they actually bring that up during the whole Bahiro Kingdom stuff. Wondering if it was better not to answer. She kept a wary eye on the girl. She didn't appear to be armed. In fact, she looked wide open to attack. Still, Silfie couldn't let her guard down. There were any number of people out there who could overpower her with their bare hands. Will knowing that I'm here make you angry with Master Rudius? What? Why is it that you're unable to accept me, Master Silfie? Yeah! Why can't you accept Nanahoshi, Silfie? We all asking that same question, Silfie. Being mean to Nanahoshi, Silfie? I don't understand. What are you talking about? She's trying to confuse you. Don't listen. It could be some sort of trick. The thought flashed through Silfie's mind. She moved to make a guarded step back. At once, the girl shouted, "Danger!" Her hand shot out with a speed that surpassed Silfie's. Her opponent was clearly quicker than her, but Silfie had anticipated that. Just because she couldn't see her didn't mean she couldn't fight back. She would finish her step, then, twisting aside to evade the attack, beat her back with magic. In an instant, she decided what to do. Then she saw Chris on the floor at her feet. Where did she come from? Without Silfie noticing, Chris had crawled in from the living room to the front door. She ignored Silfie's instruction to stay put. By some twist of fate, she was right there where Silfie was about to step. By the time that she realized it was too late, with a desperate yank, she tried to avoid treading on Chris, but she lost her balance. Her upper body wobbled. She wasn't going to be able to avoid Chris. Then her eyes caught the sight of the strange girl's arm shooting out at a terrifying speed. I forgot I didn't look at the image. Look at Silfie step on cute little Chris. She's like, I just want to come say hi to Papa. And then Silfie's about to step on her. Robo Nanahoshi looks pretty cute. Nanahoshi actually looks pretty cute with short hair. I didn't actually think that would be a thing. I like her with longer hair, though. Cut to Rudius. I hate this because, like, I know what's going on. They're going to play it up. And sure enough, as it goes through Rudius' perspective, it's like, okay, Refugin, stop. It looked like blood. There was a curious smell. People don't rot that fast. He opened the door to an unsettling smell. The body ain't going to rot that fast. The house was eerily quiet when Rudius arrived. He went past Bite. I was wondering if Bite's still alive. Yeah, how did he get past Bite? Bite just accepted it in. It's like, oh, it's Nanahoshi. It's a robot Nanahoshi. That's fine. I'll let the robot Nanahoshi in too. He went past Bite, who was wound around the gate, Aisha's vegetable garden, and Dillo and Leo's kennels. There was no one around. He opened the front door, which was unlocked, to find a hallway sparkling clean, and the door to the living room ajar. It was quiet, save for the sound of a baby crying. Chris. It was a cry of anguish, full of sorrow, as though she'd suffered a great loss. Rudius knew that cry well. As soon as he drew near, it would stop. Even with the crying, the house still seemed unnaturally quiet. At the front door, he told the mercenaries, "Wait outside for my orders." He entered. It was quiet in the hallway, too. He glanced sideways at the mirror next to the door, and he saw his own pale face staring back at him. What was that smell? It definitely wasn't pleasant. It was the sort that would make you queasy if you breathe it too long. The sort of smell that attracted flies if you left it alone. Rudius let it lead him down the corridor to the living room. That was where the crying was coming from, and he was also sure it was a source of the smell. The door was shut tight. Bracing himself, Rudius opened it. An unbelievable scene met his eyes. First, he saw the table, Chris lying on top of it on her back, bawling. Someone was half-crouching as it leaned over her, the black-haired doll. Its hands were dirty, covered in something the color of dried blood. The brown substance was still moist and gave off a powerful stench that made him want to gag. "Oh, goodness sakes, you got poop on your hands," Silfie said. "It is insignificant. The level of dirt will not impede my functionality. No arguing. Here, wipe your hands. Then roll the dirty diaper like this, and then put it in the basket to be washed later. I see. I've learned that dirt is to be washed off promptly." Silfie wiped its hands for it. The brown stain that she was wiping away, and the source of the smell wafting off the hallway, was apparently Chris's poop. Chris was lying on the table with her dirty diaper off, still bawling, until she noticed Rudius. Dada's back. She stopped crying and gave him a sunny smile. Wait, what? Rudius had imagined what he'd find. Silfie fighting, his family battered and bruised, or lying unmoving on the floor. The doll clumsily changing a diaper wasn't any of the possibilities. Again, it's overplayed. I get it. I know, it's funny. Oh, Rudy, welcome home. Silfie, are you... I guess you're not hurt? No? Why would I be? Silfie replied. Behind her stood the expressionless doll. It looked so creepy, lurking there with its inhuman face, that Rudius half expected a sword to suddenly sprout out from Silfie's chest. Dude. A Sephiroth moment. When he looked at the doll, it moved ever so slightly into Silfie's shadow. It was like it was using Silfie as a shield. That gave Rudius a slightly different impression. It was almost like it was afraid of him. Silfie, I want you to get away from that. Instead, Silfie moved to stand between him and the doll. Why? Zenoba and I made that figurine, but we lost control of it. I'm not certain, but I think it overheard us talking, and it came to either eliminate you or replace you. As he explained that, he realized its current behavior didn't quite line up for what he said. I mean, it doesn't look like I was exactly right about that. The fact remained that he didn't know what the figurine wanted. He stared it down, not dropping his guard. Huh, it's not quite the story I heard. What? What story? Silfie smiled. I'd actually like to talk to you about it. Sit down. Okay. Rudius did as she said, sitting down on the floor, crossing his legs. Silfie cocked her head at him. Rudy, I think you need to correct your posture. Really? Okay. Rudius, picking up on the note of Silfie's voice, changed his pose. The note was one of anger, which meant the only way that he should be sitting is on his knees, ready to grovel. Once Silfie was satisfied, she said, Go ahead then, and ushered the figurine forward. It looked down at him with an inhuman face. Master Rudius, are you going to scrap me? Yeah, of course. The figurine didn't so much as twitch. Rudius knew the doll's materials. Its skeleton, made of the same material as the magic armor, and its artificial flesh that allowed it to perform at the same level as a Saint-tier sword fighter, made it so dangerous that he would have to destroy it if it didn't listen to him. Now he was wearing the magic armor and had opened his demon eye. He was more of a match for it, but he couldn't let his guard down. I do not wish to be scrapped. Aww. Poor Robo Nanahoshi. Poor Robo Nanahoshi. That was when it hit him. The doll was frightened. It was just standing there, its face showing no expression and its voice flat, but it was afraid. The doll turned to Silfie. Its eyes were cold and artificial, but for some reason, the look it gave her seemed like a plea for help. You know, now that I think about it, coming up to this part right here, and again, I'm stuck on the whole thing with Lily, how Lily was kind of very attachy to it. It makes me kind of wonder if at the core that Orsted gave him to put in it has something in it. That would be like super weird if something in it, like an ancestry or something like that, like some sort of connection to Midgardian ancestry in it. It sounds like Rudy hasn't worked it out yet. Explain it to him from the beginning. The doll looked at Rudius, then to Zenoba, who had just come in the house. Then it started to talk with a flat voice. Master Rudius and Master Zenoba, you said that Master Rudius's wives would be angry if they found out about me. Master Elise told me that Master Rudius's wives were Master Silfie, Master Edis, and Master Roxy. Master Edis told me that Master Silfie once said that she was unable to accept Nanahoshi. Master Elise told me that my name was Nanahoshi. I thought about this and concluded that I must closely resemble Master Nanahoshi, and that is why I am to be scrapped. However, I am not Master Nanahoshi. I thought there must be something that I can do to change your mind. Found a loophole. Rudius, your loophole! It's not actually Nanahoshi, so it's free game. I'm joking. You know, this whole thing is just a massive problem caused by this dislike for Nanahoshi that Silfie has instilled upon Rudius. Silfie has literally burned in his brain this fear of Nanahoshi and connection to Nanahoshi, and thus it has spawned this whole problem. Its voice was flat as ever, but its distress was palpable. The doll's mind was desperately casting around for a solution. I do not wish to be scrapped. Master Rudius, you and Master Zenoba were happy when I was born, and I wish to be further service to you both. If I am scrapped, I cannot do that. It wants to follow orders, and self-preservation is part of that. Sometimes magicians using summoning magic brought disaster upon themselves when they summoned something too powerful. Man, bringing that up from a long time ago. That's like, I guess it could have been during the whole Nanahoshi summoning stuff or teleportation stuff. Yeah, Nanahoshi, I think, brought it up with Rudius when they first started talking about what she was doing. As a rule, the beasts called up from the summoning magic did not defy the summoner. They were faithful to their master. It was what they did for the summoner that brought the disaster. The doll had magic of that sort built into it. Of course it did. since it was based on Petagous's summoning magic. It thought and behaved like one of Petagous's 12 spirit servants, and his spirits had their own consciousness. This is all a very good point. What he's sort of kind of adding to that statement that Nanahoshi gave him a long time ago is the idea that you can summon whatever you want. The disaster is caused when the thing they summon is commanded to do something. Back there, when that was first brought up, it was sort of like a warning. What Rudius got out of that was a warning. Be careful what you summon. You can summon something that you can't control. It's too powerful. You don't have the capability of controlling it. This is saying specifically, no, it's you summon it, and you tell it to do something, and you don't know how to properly manage it. And it does something horrible. And this is the same. Petagous, again, this is essentially what I was talking about with Chapter 1, is like, why bother going through all this trouble when you can just do a spirit summoning? It's literally easier. It manufactures itself. This is pointing out the idea that, yeah, that core, that engraving that he gave them is essentially creating that consciousness. Again, that was that whole idea of the AI itself and how to create that AI so that it thinks and it can make decisions. It's from Petagus. It's got a mind of one of those spirits. So this is actually a cool thing because in the end, it gives a persona, a personality to this Nanahoshi bot. Rather than it just being a robot that's talking like a human, it would be just like Aramanfi. It would just be like Servarl. Equally that you see that those are characters and people, Nanahoshi bot is a person with a consciousness and everything. From the moment they were summoned, their cognizance guided them to act for the sake of their lord, to survive so that they might serve him longer. I therefore decided to ask Silfie, who I predicted from the information I obtained would take the greatest exception to my existence. It wasn't like there was a flaw in the 3 laws of robotics. The doll's nature, as a summoned spirit, had simply prevailed over them. I wished to know what I could do to earn her acceptance. Just like Nanahoshi wants to... I'm joking. When it suddenly wandered into the house uninvited, Silfie had been more alarmed than necessary. It never had hostile intentions, and had responded to Silfie's open hostility with a terrible attempt at a smile, hoping they could talk. When Silfie lost her balance and almost trotted on their daughter, the doll had reached out to stop her from falling, then asked her kindly if she was unhurt. The shock of nearly being stepped on made Chris soil her diaper, and again the doll was considerate and offered to change her. As it helped, it made its case to Silfie, explained that it didn't want to die, that it would fix whatever was wrong with it, that it just wanted to be of service. So please, do not kill me, please. Silfie had been deeply moved. Rudy, I'm not angry with you. I knew you were making something like this. She's a lot more human than I expected, but she's a good girl. Even if she is a little flawed, I want you to keep her. Rudius then asked Silfie, in which way is she flawed? She looks like Nanahoshi. Silfie looks at Nanahoshi bot. It does look a little flawed. I don't like how it looks. Gross. Looks like Nanahoshi. Gross. That concluded the doll story. Now they were just waiting for Rudius' response. At some point, the corners of Rudius' mouth had turned down. His arms were folded, and he was looking at the floor. His shoulders were shaking. There was a choking noise. Silfie looked behind Rudius and saw Zenoba's whole body was quivering. With a cry, he charged at the girl.
I had no idea you felt that way. All of it. It was all for us. Forgive me. I was wrong to say you were out of control. Forgive me.
Zenoba. Zenoba clung to the doll, with tears streaming down its cheeks. As Rudius watched, he also gave a sniff. His eyes were glistening. From his pocket, he pulled out a handkerchief and blew his nose loudly. Then, he stood there and took the doll's hand. Zenoba's right. Of course, you ran away, after we talked about scrapping you right in front of you. Of course, you want to do something about it. I understand. I don't mind if it makes Silfie angry. Zenoba and I will complete you. Then we'll use you, like we ought to. Okay, wording. Wording. I don't care if Silfie gets angry. We're gonna use you to the last drop.
I too shall face Julie's fury.
Zenoba agreed. We'll complete you and use you, don't worry. Again, I think Julie's thinking about some things with that. Both of them clung the doll. That's gonna be it's going so wrong. That's gonna be Mecha Julie. I've been always talking about what happened with Mecha Julie. We never got a Mecha Julie. She gonna use the Nanahoshi bot as a suit. I'm convinced it's going to come down to that. Both of them clung to the doll and sobbing. The expression on her face looked, to Silfie's eyes, like she was confused as to why they'd accepted her, even though she hadn't saw what was wrong with her. In any case, the matter was settled. Feeling glad, Silfie let out a sigh of relief, then patted Chris, who was fussy because Rudius wasn't paying attention to her. That was when the thought occurred to her. Rudy, I just have one last question. Why did you think I'd be angry about this? A violent shiver ran over Rudius. Turning to her, he returned to his knees. He cleared his throat once, then began to explain. The truth is, the doll's, anatomy down there, it's very elaborately. Now, Silfie was angry. I mean, it's like twofold. That was a big bad. That was a big bad. We forgot about that from chapter 1. That was a big bad. Following this, the scrapping of the doll began. Zenoba and Rudius, tears flooding in their eyes, proceeded to dismantle it piece by piece. Nearby, Silfie stood watching with a furious face. Behind the door, peeking through, Julie shook in fear as she watched the entire thing. The scrapping of the doll was called off, and it was decided that any automata manufactured would be maintained for as long as possible. Accordingly, the girl who was the center of the affair became the official model, Automata Unit 1. From now on, she would work on experiments at the laboratory and in the magic city of Shiraya, and would be included in Rudius' various plans. It was some time later that the doll's secret became known in Nahoshi. When she learned the doll with her face was capable of sexual acts, she didn't hide her disgust. Rudius' groveling and assurances that he'd promised Silfie he wouldn't use the doll for such purposes appeased her, at least for the moment. She's like, I just want to get back home. God, can I get back home? Oh, whatever. What's her name, anyways? I haven't given her one yet. Yeah? Can I name her then? Thus, Nanahoshi chose a name, and Automata Unit 1 became On. She also gave her Japanese-sounding name, Nanahoshi Hajime. That way, if Nanahoshi's friends ever appeared in the future, they could learn what happened to her. If Nanahoshi's friend asked On's name, she would give the Japanese name and explain to her the connection to the original Nanahoshi. Her official name was Automata SS-01 On. Rudius hadn't made up his mind whether or not to call Unit 2 Betty, or Unit 3 Chloe, but that was beside the point. SS, the other part of the name, stood for 7-star. This story was how the historic first model of the 7-star series was created. Over many long years, her number of younger brothers and sisters would gradually grow to a whole family. But just be clear, the rest of them didn't have nipples. But they had the bits and pieces between the legs. Wait. Did that get cut? I'm guessing that got cut. But they had the bits and pieces between the legs. That's chapter 3. I'm going to for damn sure stop there. I cannot believe I even tried to push to get the rest of the story out, but it felt like, gosh dang, what a annoying part to stop it at. But yeah, we'll leave chapter 4 for next week, and then I think it goes into the next story, which I think is something to do with Millis. I don't know. I just seen Millis something. But that's it, chat. We're gonna wrap it up there. Hopefully this is not a huge annoyance to edit this entire thing. I did know that I had a lot of mishaps, not been a really great recording session. So we'll see how it turns out in the end. If it's like 2.5 hours, then congrats to y'all for getting an extra long Mushoku Monday. I hope you guys enjoyed it. Hopefully it was entertaining. But yeah, that was an interesting story. It's not really it's cool to see this their first automata. That's really cool and everything. But I think what was cool about this segment of chapters is that I love that it's sprinkling all this stuff about the characters in between. Yeah, not so much around Elise. There's a little bit with Clive and getting to know her relationship with Clive and, just hanging out and having fun together. But like things like, seeing Edis for this first time, like being mommy mode, like it's total mommy mode. We've seen her like chasing down a kid or something like that at some point out of the bath, but that was such a mommy mode. I love that whole segment there, but it's cool to get these little kind of snippet stories in between with each of the characters as it's kind of chasing after this Robo Nanahoshi. But and some cool lore and stuff around spirit summoning and crafting the automaton was cool as well. But I hope you guys enjoyed my geeking out about that stuff as well. But anywho, we're going to call it there. Thank you guys so much for dropping by for the premiere. Hey, chat. Hope you guys had fun. Hope you guys have a great rest of your Monday after Mushoku Monday. And yes, greatly appreciate your guys' support, your kind words. Everybody that hits the like button, don't forget to hit the like button before you leave. But yes, I greatly appreciate everybody support channel monetarily through Patreon, tips, links, super thanks, memberships, all that stuff. Thank you. But until the next Mushoku Monday, which I need to get this art. I need this clean badly. You'll take care. Master Edis told me that Master Edis told me that South. Oh my gosh. Edis followed Lily's pointing finger. Edis followed Lily's pointing finger. That's a tongue twister. Nanahoshi actually took quite good care of her hair. Nanahoshi actually took quite good of her hair. Nanahoshi actually took quite good care of her. One iteration that he used reinforced frog's cheeks pouches. One iteration had used reinforced frog cheek pouches. I cannot imagine it will be. But if we're ever discovered, you know, I cannot imagine it will be. I don't know who's talking anymore. Like this, say who's talking. This is so annoying. Why don't you say who's talking?
Wouldn't its reliance on human intervention to restart? Wouldn't its reliance on human intervention to restart it? Meaning it is complete.
Wouldn't its reliance on human intervention to restart it?
Mean it isn't complete. Mean it is complete. Mean it isn't complete. Mean it isn't. Mean it. Oh my gosh.
Phrase, dude.